Welcome and good evening to the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for November 4th, 2020. Item number one. Well, before we begin, I just want to mention that congratulations to all the winners in yesterday's election, and also a special note to all the people that actually stepped up and ran for public office. Tip my hat to you. Congratulations. Item number one, if we could call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brennan.
I'm fine.
Here.
Councilmember Contreras.
Here.
Councilmember Whiting.
Here. Fine.
Councilmember Lehman.
Here.
Mayor Mars.
Here. Thank you all. Item number two, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving ahead, item number three, approval of agenda. Mr. Reynolds.
Mayor Mars, members of council, will be pulling 4A3 off of the consent agenda in order to determine a time. So if we could do that at the time where we have items removed from consent.
All right, 4A3 will be removed. Others, council members? Councilor Brennan?
I make a motion to approve the agenda of November 4th, 2020 as modified.
Whiting, second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Reynolds?
Councilmember Brennan.
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras.
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting.
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you. Item number four, consent agendas before us. Are there any changes, Mr. Reynolds, outside of 4A3?
No other changes, Mayor Mars.
Councilors, Councilor Lehman?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the consent agenda as modified.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Contreras. Discussion, I guess, if that's it, before we vote on the modified consent agenda, we would read it into the public record. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. These are the consent agenda items for Wednesday, 4 November of 2021. 4A1 approves the city council minutes for 20 October of 2021. 4A2 approves the audit engagement letter with Abdo, Eck & Myers LLP for the years ending 31 December 2020 and 2021. And 4B1 approves the Shakopee Youth Hockey Association's concession agreement for the 2020-2021 hockey season.
I have a motion and a second for the modified consent agenda. The consent agenda has been read into the public record. There would be no further discussion. By voice vote, Mr. Burkett?
Councilmember Brennan.
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras.
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting.
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. The consent agenda modified has been approved. Now we're going to move to item number 5. Now I'd like to call on any citizen resident that would like to come forward and speak on an item not on the agenda. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and welcome. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Mercy Gray, and I moved to Shakopee, about three and a half years ago. And I appreciate the opportunity to address the council members regarding affordable senior housing. The problem, I guess, is pervasive everywhere, but it's kind of close to me at this point. The Shakopee News had a article in the paper this week regarding the CARE program and the CHAP program, which with the state and the county conjunction for financial help to those homeowners and renters who have had problems with, because of the virus. But that's kind of a temporary patch or fixer. Seniors are looking for permanent solutions. Okay, a little bit of my history. I moved into Northridge Court, a 55-plus apartment, no frills, in April of 2017. I qualified with my Social Security and income from 2 part-time jobs. But because of the virus, those jobs went away. If I were to apply to Northridge today, I would be denied. I would not have 2 times my income versus what I have to pay for rent. My rent now is over $1,100 a month, and it goes up every 3% every year. So I'm at 50% of my income at this point. River City Center and Northridge and Henderson are all 55 senior complexes in Shakopee. And they're all at the fair market value, and what that is, I don't know. Maybe you can tell me sometime. But as I was stated before, our rents go up 3% every year. Well, I'm getting to that point where I can't afford that. And even there's couples in our building that they are worried if one of their spouses passes away, whoop, are they going to have to move too? So that is a concern, not just for me, but for others in our location. I checked with the Dakota County through the Senior Housing Resource Guide, and checked to find out Dakota County has 40 income-based properties. Shakopee has 9. But of the 9, the CDA said they have not, of the 9, 7 have not added any new names to their waiting list since 2007. That's 13 years. I can't imagine waiting 13 years for affordable senior apartment. And I looked online, your 2040 Envision for Shakopee is a beautiful presentation. It lines out some of the future plans for the city to beautify not only the downtown areas, but the riverfront areas, bring jobs, new shopping, new housing, but I don't see affordable senior housing in that. Where do we fit in? Also, I noticed the council had announced in May of this year $1.5 million that you were going to put towards construction of a complex for the homeless. Would that money be best used for affordable senior housing? Minneapolis, St. Paul, and many other cities are trying to juggle things. What are they going to do with the homeless? Some communities have revented old hotels and motels to fit the homeless. I think Minneapolis and St. Paul are talking about revamping some of their warehouse things to house them. So, given that, I want to mention the fact that the population in the whole U.S. is getting older. And seniors want to remain independent as long as they can. the fact that if they can't manage the repairs at their home anymore and upkeep, where are they going to go? Do they have to leave their families and friends and move elsewhere? I'd like to see facilities here so they don't have to move away from their church, their doctors, whatever. And the fact that they may have to go into an assisted living or memory care place at $3,000 to $9,000 a month, it's a bit of a reach for most seniors. So that's what my concern is. In conclusion on all this stuff is that I'd like to see if we could form a focus group that would entail seniors, government entities such as yourselves, nonprofit organizations, to come up with planning for the future before it gets too critical. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. And it wasn't too intimidating with all these empty chairs, so I guess I'm okay. But I look forward to working with you in the future.
Well, thank you, Marcy. I've talked with you on the phone a couple weeks ago, and affordable housing, senior affordable housing is an issue that I talk with all my mayors, at least in the Scott County area. It's all over Minnesota, and you know, I know we have some places, but then they fill up instantly. Affordable housing, not necessarily just for seniors. I think your best avenue now is the CDA at the county.
Okay.
I don't want to minimize your idea of having a group and talking about it, but it really takes a driver of a developer to come forward and want to be a player in that market, right? They're coming forward slowly, piece by piece, on affordable housing, 60% AMI, but specifically for seniors. It's usually the role of the CDA. We're fortunate here in Shakopee that we do have a couple of their units, Northridge and River City Center and the Henderson, but is it not deep enough of a discount or a subsidy? But certainly I think there is demand for it, and I wish all the time that a developer would come forward with an opportunity for a senior affordable housing opportunity for our community.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
And you have some paperwork, we'll make sure that gets to council.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions, Councilor Brennan?
Yep, I just want to comment that the Scott County is, the Live, Learn, and Earn group is currently working on the blueprint for housing. And that's what the plan is for housing for the next several years. And we're always looking for community members to be a part of this group. I don't know if you have computer access like we're doing right now, because those meetings are being held virtually, but we could, see if we can connect you in, find a way to connect you in. But then you would have an opportunity to meet with other members of the community, other elected officials, and other staff people, and get your concerns out and voice your concerns. So I think I have your phone number. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would really,
sure am.
I would get a hold of you and talk to you.
Thank you. Councilor Whiting, you had a comment?
Councilor Brennan pretty much summed it up. I wanted to mention that Scale Live, Learn, and Earn initiative, and that they are focusing on housing and the broader scope of all needs of housing. And I think, Mr. Mayor, you brought up a good point that developers have to bring a product to us. There are some opportunities with TIF to create an element of affordability in some of these projects, but again, a developer has to bring something forward and ask for that from us. So you're right, there's needs out there, and there's more than just seniors. So I understand your needs, and with COVID, it's gonna get worse. So I think the mayor's mentioning the CDA and the county, I think, is the best bet for you. So good luck.
Thank you. Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, can we have staff hook this fine young woman up with the head lady that's running the Scott County Live, Learn, Earn program? I can't remember her name, but I know Bill Reynolds has her contact information. And she can call her directly and talk about her concerns over the phone, and she'll be represented by the lead on that.
Thank you, Mr. Lemon. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Reynolds, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a clarification. The city actually never gave money to that particular project that you mentioned, ma'am. And I don't believe that that project is actually moving forward at this point either, so.
Okay.
But the city did not, the only thing that we did was adjust the zoning for that particular
Okay,
project.
it was in the paper, and so I just threw it in there, but
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Thank you, nice to meet you.
Excellent.
Okay.
No, I continue to call on any resident that would like to come forward and speak on an item not on the agenda. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Mayor.
Good evening, welcome.
Just to add on, my name is Mike DeRoche, and I'm south of the city here, but I mean, just to add on what her concerns were, what's the incentive for the developers to come? Is it the contribution by the state or the city or the county? Why do developers develop in some areas more than others?
Well, I think it's supply and demand, also availability of land or what's around. Also, most of these projects go for grant money at the state level and the federal level, and they got to get their plan and score, and it's very, very competitive for the federal tax credits. Those are allocated by the state, and every year they have 100 and 150 applicants that are trying to all compete for this little bit of pot of money. Okay. And then they have a ranking and scoring system. I know development here in town that went through a couple cycles that trying to always better their score. But you know, I think that affordable housing, whether it's seniors or you know, it's a big topic. You can't, a day can't go by that that it's not written up in the paper, and we hear that builders are having, you know, a record year and things like that. They're building to the market, right? In a capitalist world, they obviously don't see enough demand for the other affordable housing aspect, and I don't know why. Maybe with the grant money and the timeline is so long between idea, getting it ready, to approval, to build it out is quite a long process. I don't know if that's a deterrent, but we try to encourage it, but like I say, I haven't had too many developers. We've had a handful.
Sure.
On projects that are 60% AMI, they're not specific to seniors. I know the Willows over by Kitty Corner from Hy-Vee is opening. We have a project over by Target. We just approved some pass-through dollars for along an older apartment building in Shakopee, over on the corner of 4th and Marshall, that is going to get rehabbed, and those will be 60% AMI. Are they specific to seniors? Probably not, and then those waiting lists builds out like that. I know the one at over by Target, the waiting list, the minute they open their doors, it was full and a waiting list. So, and that's not unique to Shakopee, in every community.
Is the driving force then the state money?
That for the developer, that's where they want to be, but it's so competitive, and the scoring and from a city standpoint, we just can't say, come, we're open for business. Come and bring a proposal. We just have not seen those in the quantities that we would need to meet the demand.
Has the city looked at incentives to those builders, and then, to at least put a Shakopee to the higher level on the list?
We have some tools, but you got to have a developer at the table.
Okay. All right. Do you have people that actually pursue developers? Is that something that somebody's in charge of, or?
We have an economic development director.
Okay. He's doing a good job on, like, for instance, the
For
industrial,
businesses
yep.
and, you know, we have a lot of development in Shakopee.
Yep.
I think that's a good thing for our communities,
Yes,
expanding the
yes,
tax
it is.
base, the jobs, certain sectors of the housing industry, hopefully more retail and more choices for us as consumers. I think COVID has kind of put a wrench in it, but here in Shakopee, we're pretty strong. But you're speaking about a specific
Sure.
niche market, not a niche, but a market that kind of is not being looked at by developers, and that, you know, it's kind of sad.
Yeah, okay.
Mayor?
Councilor Lehman?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Sir, one of the issues is when anybody wants to develop something, they do a market analysis and a financial analysis. In 60% AMI housing, you have the land cost, the construction cost, and the outlay to maintain the building for a period of time after, 20 years, roofing and stuff like that. All of these costs go into a matrix, and if they're getting reimbursed, while they figure out how much do we have to get in rents for each unit to cover our debt load for the land, the building, and all these costs to operate it. And unless you have the partners lined up to help offset that cost, it's not financially feasible without taking a loss. So, it would be great somebody could just build something and say, I'm not going to worry about paying for it. But the reality is the stuff has to get paid for.
Sure.
And the question is, where does the money come from? You're not going to, you wouldn't invest your own $30 million knowing you're never going to make your money back. Neither will a developer. So it takes a lot of pieces to come together to make that happen. And, the reality is the state has got a pretty big size budget deficit right now because of this virus. Everybody's hurting, and it's a matter of priorities moving forward. And there is a constitutional balanced budget requirement at the state, unlike the federal government. So it's a tough issue. It's not just as easy as saying we want this and there it is.
Sure, I understand. I wanted to know the sequence and the procedural ideas of it, and how it starts and how it ends and that kind of thing. So that's what you had mentioned, that developers have to come to you or to the city. So that's why I wanted a clarification on that.
Yeah, they come and talk about their plans, but it's also, can I get my plan in Shakopee, but I still got to go over here to the state and get my money.
Yep.
There's a lot of moving parts, and
Okay.
Councilor Lehman, the expenses of the land, and then they're looking at their pro forma. I know other communities have, if an apartment building gets built, they have a requirement, it's a policy that 10% of the units are affordable. Well, what's affordable in that area? Is it tied to the AMI? Is it senior specific? But if you look at that in a real market, maybe those 10 units, the demand is so high, the waiting list is so high, but then really who might make up that other 30% difference? It might be in the market rent of the other units. Mm-hmm. So it's a trade-off here. We all want to be good stewards and have opportunity and have a livable lifestyle cycle community. Mm-hmm. But I know that certain areas are left behind. And seniors is one of them. Homeless, we have, Scott County has an issue, and we tried to partner with a developer that's trying to come forward. It takes a long time to meet those needs, but it'd be great if a developer come forward with a plan for a senior only. And actually the driver on most of that is our Scott County CDA. And they have put buildings in our community. We are blessed with a couple of them. Mm-hmm. And they do offer subsidized housing to some degree. Mm-hmm. But they also put housing in Prior Lake and in Savage, and one just opened in Jordan. So they're active, but they're trying to supply the whole county, right, in different areas, so.
Okay.
Thank you for the
Thank-
discussion.
Yeah, thanks for your answer.
Pretty robust discussion, I appreciate it.
Well, I bet we
thank
could
you.
go on for a long time.
We could. We need a developer at the table. Anybody else like to come forward and make comment on an item not on the agenda? If not, thank you very much. We'll move forward then to business removed from consent. And we just had one item, 4A3, which was a scheduled special council meeting for canvassing, and I know we took this up at our last meeting, Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mars, and members of council. Essentially, we're trying to figure out what time council would like to meet on the 12th for the canvassing. It should be a relatively short meeting, but we do need a start time, so I'll just throw that out.
So it's just one item on this special meeting for canvassing that has to be completed. It, you know, it standardly start at 7, but for one item, we could start at 5. I don't think this meeting would take but a half hour or less. Counselor Whiting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to make a motion to set the time for 7 p.m. November 12th to review and approve the 2020 municipal election results.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Would there be any opportunity to move that to an earlier? Counselor Contreras?
I was just wondering if we could start it earlier, if there was any reason why we couldn't start it earlier.
Counselor Lehman?
Well, I get done at work at 6, so it'd be nice not to have to lose productivity time.
Could you be here at 6?
Really dirty, if you don't mind.
We don't mind, as long as you're here, able to complete the city's business.
Well, I leave at 6, so I would probably be about quarter after.
I'm assuming we're meeting by Zoom still.
Correct.
Until further notice. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes?
I'd like to amend my motion to 6:20 November 12th to review the 2020 municipal election results.
The motion maker is making an amendment. Is that acceptable to the second?
Good compromise, yes, sir.
So 6:20 for our special meeting to canvass the election. Motion on the table, a second. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Burkett?
Councilmember Brennan?
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras?
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting?
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman?
Aye.
Mayor Mars?
Aye. Thank you very much. Moving ahead then to 7A, the 2020 full-depth pavement reconstruction public hearing. I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. Mr. Burkett?
Councilmember Brennan?
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras?
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting?
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman?
Aye.
Mayor Mars?
Aye. Public hearing is now open, and we will present this item. Ryan, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mars and Council. This is the public hearing for the 2020 full-depth pavement reconstruction project. This is a special assessment public hearing. To just refresh your memory on this project, it is a full, basically like a street reconstruction type project without major utility work such as sanitary sewer or storm sewer, or water main, generally reconstructing the road surface. We had 5 different project locations in here. This was a local public improvement project that we followed Minnesota State Statute 429 for assessments with. We affected Parkridge Drive, Sarazen Street, the Dominion Hills neighborhood, including Promise Ave, Peace Ave, Peace Circle, Chateau Avenue, Dominion Avenue, Levitt Woods Lane, and we are in the Westridge Lake Estates area as well, which is Vista Ridge Lane and Westridge Drive. Project timeline, just to bring you back, the City Council received the feasibility report back in January. Shortly thereafter, in February, we held the public improvement hearing and ordered the project. We put together plans. We got this out for bid. And in April, early April, the City Council awarded a contract to William Mueller and Sons out of Hamburg, Minnesota. Since then, they've been under construction for the bulk of the summer. And in early October, we were able to finish up construction of these different project areas. And I stand before you here for the public hearing and to adopt assessments this evening. This is kind of the fun part, show you the befores and after, kind of sell the project. This is in specific Park Ridge Drive, before and after. Similar situation, Dominion Hills before construction and after construction. This is Vista Ridge Drive, kind of looking northbound there. Sorry for the snow. I wouldn't have elected to get that in October. So here we go, project costs, right? Feasibility estimate, when we came in when we awarded the contract, we estimated costs at that time to be about $2.536 million. The actual final costs, we were fortunate, we were able to keep project costs down, and we ended up at $2.262 million. With that, then we move on to our funding sources for this project, and the staff has calculated this out. The assessments are $618,366.75. The capital improvement fund is slated to fund $1,584,000 of the project. The sanitary sewer, some manhole castings, little things, about $4,200 to that. The storm sewer fund is going to pick up about $53,000. If you can go back for one more second. And that last one was about $1,900 for Shakopee Public Utilities. And then one small note that I made there, when we brought this agenda item ordering the public hearing in October, since that time we've had one resident present some evidence to staff that one of the lots that we were looking to assess was truly unbuildable. So I'll discuss that in further detail, but there was an adjustment from those funding sources, specifically the assessments and the CIF. We had notified all the residents of their assessments at this point, so that adjustment ended up being eaten by the capital improvement fund. With that, time to discuss those special assessments. So per city assessment policy, generally 30% of the accessible street improvements are to be assessed. Through most of these neighborhoods, these are all generally residential neighborhoods. We look at doing a cost per lot basis. We are assessing 30% of the cost of the accessible street improvements by the number of accessible lots in the neighborhood. And we do make corner lot adjustments so that residents who are on a street corner aren't getting hit for two different streets. They get a half per street, so they pay the same as anybody else on an internal lot. We did have one along a collector street there, Saracen Street, where we had rear yards on one side, kind of an undeveloped parcel on the other side. So we're assessing that one on a per front footage basis. So just a little bit different on that one. So here are the assessment maps. So this is the Park Ridge Drive area. All of those denoted in pink are receiving a full unit assessment. If you see the little asterisk, that is designated as a corner lot. On this particular map, you'll see there's kind of the upper valley drainage ditch, that city drainage way. We are not assessing that portion of the roadway in front of that to those residents. The capital improvement fund is paying 100% of the street improvements for that half of the roadway. This is the Saracen Street, the assessment map. So you'll see we're assessing that large parcel on the west. On the east side there, you'll see there are a lot of properties adjacent to that. A lot of those are backyards, and backyards are hard to show a benefit when you go to assess. And per past practice, and city assessment policy, we typically do not assess rear lots, so therefore we're not assessing those lots. On this map here, a few special considerations there on the left-hand side. So we were approached by the property owner at 2268 Promise Avenue. It's pretty small on the screen, but it's that very far upper left corner of that map. And you can see he touches on Hillside Drive and Promise Ave there. And he had asked for a corner lot adjustment. That little section of Hillside Drive is kind of a unique road. It actually is the intersection of Marshall Road and County Road 78 on the west. On the east side, there's turn lanes, special configuration, and it was recently constructed by Scott County, and then the improvements kind of turned back to the city. So with that said, we looked at what happened. We'd actually done a reclamation project to the north of this as well, and the lot just on the other side of Hillside Drive to the north received a full unit for that improvement project off of Hillside running north, and didn't receive for that project. So trying to remain consistent here, the uniqueness of that Hillside Drive and the improvements, we will make sure that we document this so that this homeowner won't pay an assessment in the future on Hillside, and he would remain on Promise Avenue. So staff is recommending a full lot assessment for that lot. I have 2315 Promise Avenue. That is kind of upper right corner. It now is depicted with a star for a corner lot. When staff brought forward the feasibility report, I think we just missed that one as a corner lot, kind of those weird curvy streets out there. So that was brought up at the feasibility level. Took a look at it. Per policy, staff is recommending a corner lot adjustment. So that has been made and is representative in the assessment role. And then the last one, doesn't have an address, but it's at PID 271900090. And the property owner had requested and actually spoke before you at the improvement hearing. He had bought this lot for, I think he said $1,000. Since then, he's made several attempts to try and develop or build this particular lot. He had gotten septic companies out there to drill, do percolation tests. He provided all that information to the county. Long story short, the county has written the city an email saying that this lot under its current situation is unbuildable. I don't see, therefore, it's hard to say that there's a $9,000+ benefit to this lot if you can't build it in its current situation. What I would offer is that if we, 20, 30, 40 years from now, after these roads deteriorate, you extend sanitary sewer into this neighborhood, absolutely that would become a buildable lot at that time. We'd probably be reconstructing the streets at that time, and that lot would pay an assessment at that time. So staff is recommending no assessment for this lot. And this is the one particular lot that we made the adjustment to the CIF and the assessment amounts in the previous funding table.
Was that for a full share or just use some sort of dollar amount? Was it a full assessment dollar amount, or was it a division of the cost of the project?
On something like this, the value of the lot currently by Scott County is maybe $3,000. There's literally no value. And if you did try to prorate that based on kind of a land cost or land and building cost to these others, you're talking about a nominal dollar amount. So staff is just recommending no assessment.
No, I understand on an unbuildable lot. I get that part,
Yeah.
but the math that went into the amount that the CIF is going to absorb because of that.
That was a full unit assessment, Mayor and Council, which was equivalent to, I believe it was $9,570 odd.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. This next one is Vista Ridge neighborhood, or the Westridge Lake Estates. There is a property owner on the far southwest corner at 507 Vista Ridge that had requested no assessment. The homeowner did provide some information when the house was built. The septic system encroached upon the adjacent property. But with that said, the resident owns both lots. That lot the encroachment could be cleared up with either a property line change or just simply reconstructing the septic system. That site, we have no evidence to determine that it's a non-buildable lot. That could be sold tomorrow theoretically and developed and built. And so we are recommending a full assessment for this one as well. And then lastly, here's Montecito Drive. And the property owner at 1770 Montecito Drive has frontage on Montecito Drive. And then the rear property backs up to a frontage road along Eagle Creek. And this particular resident spoke to you as well in the improvement hearing at the beginning of this project to request this. So I want to make sure that we bring all these back up for consideration. On this one, just like you saw on Saracen Street, we do have rear lots that per assessment policy, we generally don't go after rear lot assessments. It gets really hard to prove that benefit, kind of funky there. So when you're looking at past practice policy, et cetera, staff is making the strong recommendation to move forward with assessing this one a full unit. A full unit on the front. And when that road in the back is improved, there would be no assessment for this resident.
No assessment on the other road?
On the rear.
So you're saying this is being assessed for his front yard?
Correct.
And there would be no assessment on that frontage road because it's considered a rear, okay.
That is correct, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
With that, here are your proposed assessment rates. So on the right-hand side there, you'll see what we were proposing at feasibility. A couple of these have come down pretty significantly, a nice cost savings for the residents. Park Ridge Drive is now $2,884.30 for a full-size standard lot. We did not have to do soil corrections in this neighborhood. We had soil borings that showed a 300-400 foot stretch of road that could potentially need some excavation and replacement with sand. We didn't have to do that. We were able to save on some of those curb costs, if you remember back to that conversation. So we were able to save here, and it's $2,884.30. Saracen Street came in just underneath that feasibility estimate at $33.47 per foot. The Dominion Hills neighborhood, you'll see a nice savings there as well. We did use the sand section that we brought forth. We did not have to use any contingency. We had a little bit of extra in case we had wet spring conditions or wet road conditions. It was a dry summer. Roads have held up everywhere. So these roads all have fabric. We excavated out bad material, went down, put fabric, put a foot of sand, 8 inches of rock, 4 inches of bituminous asphalt. So we should have a really nice road section out there for these neighbors. Westridge Lake Estates came in under at $4,701.90 per lot. And the Area E in Montecito Drive is $2,609.80 for a full lot assessment. Again, Montecito, initially we didn't have soil boring for that. We found that we did get borings. We didn't need to do quite as much excavation as we needed to out there. In fact, we did very little, and it shows, and the roads look fantastic in all these neighborhoods. The proposed payback period is 10 years for these assessments with an interest rate of 5%. That interest rate, that 5%, is determined, so per city assessment policy, if the city had to borrow money via, say, bonding to pay for this improvement, we typically try to recoup the interest that the city would spend on bonding or borrowing, plus a 2% up factor for administrative costs recouping those assessments. Similarly, if it was something that we took cash from reserves and we were investing that money, what's that loss if we used it to pay for this, since we're borrowing it to the residents for this period of time? With that, we have some amortization schedules here so that you can kind of see what the impact looks like for residents. Payments in that Park Ridge Drive varying from, in that first year, $456 down to $302. If you took the full 10 years at 5% interest, over the life of that loan, you would end up paying about $817 in interest. Area C, Dominion Hills, payments from $1,500 per year down to $1,000 in the last years, with almost $2,700 in interest there. That next slide, Westridge Lake Estates, similar $744 in that first year for that would go on the taxes, and then $493 in that last year, about $1,300 in interest. And Montecito Drive is there, annual payment of about $413, down to about $274 in that last year. Left untouched, there'd be about $739 paid in interest over the life of that loan. So repayment options for residents. Residents can pay in full, or they can pay any amount, a partial payment with absolutely no interest until December 4th, directly to the city finance director at City Hall. And as soon as you approve these assessments, or assuming you approve these assessments, a notice will be mailed to the residents with these payment instructions. Any assessments that aren't prepaid will be levied, sent to the county, and property taxes and levied. So they'll be paid over a period of 10 years and subject to that 5% interest rate from the date the assessments are adopted tonight. And then pay off, they can pay off assessments at any point early in that 10 years to avoid future interest payments. So there's a certain county date, you can check on that when they levy taxes and the interest for the next year. I think it's mid-November. If you pay it off each year prior to that, you would have no taxes for the remainder of the, or interest, excuse me, for the rest of the assessment. And with that, a couple things here. One, we sent letters and notices to all the residents with instructions. And one of the things that I'd like to bring attention to here is any property owners who would wish to preserve their right to appeal their assessment do need to notify the city in writing prior to the close of the public hearing tonight. I personally don't have any objections or anything in hand at this time. The other thing that I'd like to bring to council's attention is this is an assessment public hearing, which requires a 4/5 vote to 4 out of 5 for approval. And with that, I'd ask City Council to adopt Resolution R 2020-128, a resolution adopting assessments for the 2020 full depth pavement reconstruction project, CIF 20-004.
Ryan, thank you very much. Questions of staff? Councilor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of questions. The first one, Dominion Hills, the assessments are higher than the averages that we usually see, 4 or 5, 5,500. They're 9,500. Refresh my memory, is that because of the size of the lots?
Mayor and council, that is correct. These are anywhere from 2 to 5 acre lots with significant road frontage in front of them. When you're looking at a lot that's getting a $4,000 assessment in the downtown, that might be 60 feet of street frontage. Out here, you could be talking 300 to 400 feet of street frontage in front of one house.
Okay, and the second question is, I received a email of appeal that has your name CC'd on it. Can you check your email and see if you received it and enter that into the record?
Absolutely.
Or can I forward it to somebody right now? It is.
Can you please forward that to the city engineer, Steve Lillehog, please? Councilmember Lehman?
Well, let's see if I've got his email on my phone.
You can do it to me, Councilor Lehman, Administrator
you.
Reynolds.
Okay, we'll wait for that to come through. And then, but other questions of staff? Other questions of staff? I want to make comment. I know that we took public testimony before. Looks like we might have some tonight. I've driven on all these roads. Great to see the costs come down. I do appreciate that. Nobody really likes getting assessed. But I think there's value and longevity in the improvements that have been made. From that aspect, and I know we had a lot of discussion about the soils on a couple areas, some specific lots. We did discuss that one that's now deemed unbuildable, unfortunately. We took care of that, so I want to compliment staff on this project because it wasn't just one area, right? It's usually just a neighborhood. This was kind of a spread out one this year, so with that.
Mayor?
Councilor Lehman?
Yeah, for the record, this one is 2 lots, 507 Vista Ridge Lane and 527 Vista Ridge Lane in the Westridge Estates. And Mr. Reynolds, did you receive that email?
Yes, sir, I've got it. I'm forwarding it to them right now.
And then can Ryan address, apparently they're getting hit with 2 assessments for 2 separate lots. I don't know if you're familiar with these 2 lots. Is one unbuildable or?
It's a septic system.
The slide on the screen right now, I spoke to this one in particular, 507 Vista Ridge Lane. This is where the homeowner had bought the house from the builder. The builder had built the septic system for the primary location on the adjacent lot, or encroaching on the adjacent lot.
Okay.
So at that time, the property owner made the choice to purchase that second lot, as opposed to passing on it or asking the builder to clear up the encroachment, et cetera. We don't have any information provided from this resident to deem this an unbuildable lot. We've
Okay.
reviewed it with city codes, septic design type things, and we don't have anything to deem this an unbuildable lot.
So, Counselor Lehman, then, I guess without any county information, so that lot could have a field and a reserve field as well, even with the encroachment, is that what we're saying?
Mayor and council, theoretically, yes. It is a tough conversation, depending on the size of the house that you build. That requires a certain size. How many bedrooms, the septic site, there's no information provided to staff to show that soils can't percolate or allow for the septic. So unfortunately, the city doesn't have anything to go off of to deem this an unbuildable lot.
So, but I could put up a house so big that then the lot would be unbuildable because of the septic requirements.
Theoretically, yes.
That's a choice of the landowner, correct? All right, follow-up question? More discussion, questions of staff? Do we want to, it was at the address of the email? Okay,
Mayor, I just wanted to make sure that that email that I received was forwarded to staff, so it's on record.
okay.
On record, it has been forwarded.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Counselor Whiting? Counselor Whiting?
Yes. I didn't raise my hand, but I did want to make a comment. I want to thank Ryan again with a good job. I didn't hear any complaints about the construction projects this past season. And as always, he does a great job with the citizens and on so many different various projects that they're all a little bit different. So thanks again for doing that. I
right,
know
if
this is
there's,
a public
no other
hearing, so other
questions of
people can
staff,
speak. So.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing then, and anybody would like to come forward and make comment in regard to this project, and please state your name and address for the record, and welcome. Get set up here. Thank you. Good evening and welcome.
Oops. Hello, Cal Tenick, 1770 Montecito Drive. Mr. Halverson mentioned me in his presentation. When we first discussed this project back in February, we kind of looked at things and they explained to us that because of the unique nature of our lots in our area, that the most fair and equitable way to assess people would be by the lot instead of by frontage or anything else. But now that we're doing assessments, I'm feeling like the fair and equitable train just fell off the tracks because we have 5 properties that have frontage on both Eagle Creek and Montecito Drive. And of the 5, the one with the least amount of total road frontage, the one with the 3rd smallest amount of area, is the only one paying a full share. He did mention he didn't bring it up in specifics, but looking at the city assessment policy, it it clearly defines the corner lots and the policy for the corner lots. And then for number 5, which happens to be my lot, it falls under this double fronting lots paragraph, which states that for double fronting lots, the lots will be assessed at 50% of the unit rate for each street improved or 100% of the local street only. So it's an either-or proposition. Mr. Halverson, I guess, decided on the or proposition, which I strongly disagree with, for the simple fact that in 2016, the county completely reconfigured County Road 16, which made Eagle Creek Boulevard the frontage road. And one of the big results of that is Eagle Creek Boulevard now has a very, very minimal car count per day going down that road, much similar to Montecito Drive. We got 40 plus years out of the original Montecito Drive before this project was done. And this road did not represent the Oregon Trail when they redid it. He even mentioned how well the substrate still was after 40 years. They didn't have to do hardly any work underneath the pavement. With Eagle Creek Boulevard under the same situation now, and with today's technology, 40 years to the new, the chances of Eagle Creek being completely reconstructed in my lifetime are somewhere between slim and none. And so goes my benefit of not having to pay any assessments on Eagle Creek Boulevard when it gets done, because I'll be likely in a cemetery somewhere. So I'm here now asking the council to review this particular problem and come to a decision of either A, Cal makes some pretty good points here, let's give him a 50% share because it is more fair and equitable at this time, or B, fair and equitable doesn't matter and we'll just stick it to them. And I also have the written notification that Mr. Halverson spoke of,
In your appeal,
reserving my right to appeal any decision made tonight.
we will take that into the public record. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you want to make comment on this, Ryan?
Mayor and council, you know, when staff looks at this, we are looking at a fairness and equitability, and I understand, you know, the argument of frontage and frontage. When we look at something like this, assessments are hard to prove on rear lots, on the rear frontages of roads. And historically, across Shakopee, when we do these, corners and the frontages, yep, we assess for those. Historically, we haven't. If you look at the assessment map that we have on Saracen Street, we're not assessing those lots. So to remain fair and equitable here, if you give them a half here, then I guess staff's recommendation would be you would need to almost do the same thing on Saracen Street. Now that's unattainable at this point because we haven't given proper notice, et cetera. But staff really genuinely looks at this over 5, 10, 20 years of how we've been assessing these projects and trying to remain fair. If the council elects to, staff's recommendation is to go with full assessment. The ultimate decision does lie with City Council.
And this,
Mr. Lillahog would.
you know, some of it is this homeowner in this unique situation is getting a benefit though because of a new road for his road that is abutting that. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct, Mayor, and if I could add, the fairness and equitableness, this property would pay the same exact amount as a neighbor across the street, several of the neighbors across the street. So there is a good fairness and equitableness to this assessment. The cost came in very low. It's one of the lower assessments we have on projects in the city. And I would say, if the council were to consider only giving a half unit in the future when we would come and reconstruct that frontage road, which would be, 20 years from now, my recommendation at that point would be not to assess this property, that 0.5 unit, because it, as Mr. Halverson indicated, it would be very hard to prove benefit. And that's a requirement with these assessment projects that we have to prove benefit, an equal amount of benefit. And we just simply, it'd be very hard to prove that. So we would, in the future, be given this parcel kind of a free ride. And a strong recommendation that we stick with the full unit on this, understanding all the arguments, pros and cons. Just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments on this discussion? Counselor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. What's the address of this property? Is it 1770?
The one in the middle?
1770, yes.
Okay. Question for staff. 1784 corner lot. Is it paying, it's got an asterisk saying it's a corner lot. Is it paying on the front and the side two halves for a whole?
You know, we've got lots of unique lots in town. This one, if you want to truly look at it, you could consider it's got three sides. Again, consistency, you've got Montecito on one side, Eagle Creek on the other. It's got the two frontages. So staff is looking or viewing that as half of it on Montecito and half of it on Eagle Creek Boulevard.
But Eagle Creek doesn't have an assessment capability per our city engineer 10 seconds ago.
Mayor and council members, that's not necessarily what I said. I'm saying when there's a back frontage only type of assessment, it's difficult to prove benefit. But a side yard, different. We have side yard benefits all over town. We've historically given side yard benefits. Sometimes you will see the street that we're constructing, the driveways are on the other. Side yards are different than back frontage only. So in this case, for 1784, 1756, generally both of those parcels, they do have three frontages. We looked at it in the sense that it's easier to prove benefit as it does have side yard on that frontage road, so we kept it at half rates. So when we do have a future frontage road, those corner lots, we would look at giving them a half unit rate, and we could demonstrate that the side yards would prove that benefit at a half unit rate. I'm pretty confident in that, and I would not have an issue with this recommendation going forward. The city council could give 1784 and 1756 a full unit on each of them, but our recommendation stands.
Yeah. And yet, just to be clear, on 1770, if we're assessing that on frontage for Montecito, then that says that the backyard is on Eagle Creek,
Mayor and council, that is correct.
and that wouldn't be accessible.
It's harder to prove accessible. We're not
I
recommending it.
understand that. Okay, I just want to, all right.
Okay, Mayor, if I can continue.
Mr. Counselor Lehman?
So the other way I looked at this is to say that 1770 is my house, which is 8th in between Minnesota and Dakota, 2nd from the corner. And 1784 would be the house right next to me on the corner of 8th and Dakota, Minnesota, I'm sorry. And that property gets a half on 8th and a half on Dakota on its side yard, and I receive a full on 8th Avenue in front of my house. So is it strictly because of which way the house is facing?
Mayor and council, in this particular instance, to be honest, I can't even tell you which direction necessarily that house faces, if it's due north or facing off to the east. You've got a lot where it's got three frontages essentially. Montecito is all one because of the curvature of the road. It certainly looks like it's got, we're considering that. It's not a standard lot. You don't have two side lots and a rear. It's really, you've kind of got one rear and three sides on street corners. Yep. Just trying to do this, like we said, consistent with what we've done in past projects per policy.
Okay. Thank you very much, staff. Are we going to, more discussion on this actual point, Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, it seems to me that we need to decide if there's gonna be any future assessments on Eagle Creek frontage road in the future. Not yes to some and not to others. Either there is or there isn't, because that would kind of clear up how we go about this. Or are we gonna assess some on Eagle Creek and not others? And how is the record gonna reflect that?
Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mayor Mars and Councilor Lehman. Essentially, we're trying to be consistent with what we've done in the past. The parcel in question, the only reason it wouldn't be assessed is because it's fully fronting in the back on Eagle Creek. The other two properties do not do so. They actually have what you can consider a side lot. Again, it's an odd configuration, but that's how we would consider doing it in any other place as well.
Okay. So the equity argument then is 1756 and 1784 eventually are going to pay the other half of an assessment on the frontage road for a combined total of two sides, one whole lot of assessments over time. And 1770 is going to pay one full lot assessment on the front on Montecito and not have any assessment, so it wouldn't be like it would be an assessment and a half at any future date off of Eagle Creek frontage.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. We'll come back and tie this one up. But this is a public hearing. Anybody else like to come forward and make comment on this assessment? And welcome. State your name and address for the record, and I'm glad you're here.
Dana Lorzell, 1440 Chateau Avenue. Things are great. The road looks fine. The house at this address was probably built 59 with an address of 2401 Marshall Road. Twice now, and since I've been on this property, the county has taken a piece of it to widen the roads. Progress is great. And then, so now here, like 3 years ago with this county road, the 4-lane and all, they took my access to Marshall Road away, turned it into 1440 Chateau Avenue with a little cul-de-sac there. So then my property is now less than an acre, probably 20 feet of property against the Chateau Avenue. Question is it a fair assessment for having my address changed for this small use that I...
Well, they were trying to reroute, obviously, some access points when they were expanding Marshall Road.
Correct.
When they knocked on your door and said we wanted 20 feet, if they did that once or twice, did you get reimbursed for that loss?
Oh, yeah.
And you have a new access point. Now you have a new road. Yes, your lot has been reduced. But I believe you've been compensated for that, and then on the new access point, you're getting a brand-new road, which should benefit your smaller lot.
And to add to that, I had nothing to do with wearing out the old road.
How long did you own that property?
I owned it since 1981 or 2.
It served you well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to get to the root of your question.
My question is, well, I heard things that came up about, you know, the amount of feet that people
Right.
have against the road and the large or size of the lots. So, you know, when I bring the fact up that my lot's much smaller in the neighborhood, I have very little frontage or footage on the road. and the address was changed to the road just shortly prior to the road construction. So I just wondered if any of that was taken in consideration to the assessment.
Staff?
Yeah.
Mayor
you.
and council, so these roads serve this neighborhood. The same benefit is achieved or is sustained by all these properties in this neighborhood. Garbage service, deliveries, they themselves using the roadway. He is a little bit smaller than the others. I would think, so in previous years, we've done, when we did Wood Duck Trail even, we did do a benefit analysis for similar type homes. Actually, these would actually be probably larger homes that were than what was even on Wood Duck Trail for this exact same area. Benefit showed that there was at least $12,000 worth of benefit. We're sitting at $9,500. I think that we can still show that benefit to this lot. And there is still, the access is there. With that said, I would also say, you know, the argument of taking his address off of Marshall Road and putting it onto the city streets, understood he's got to get through the neighborhood instead. He probably has never paid an assessment or anything off of county roads. So, you know, in fairness, he's avoided that for 30, 40 years. Staff is recommending an assessment. He gains access, he's got frontage to this road and uses it the same as everybody else in this neighborhood.
Thank you. Follow-up?
Well, thank you.
You're very kind. Questions? Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, can we explain to the applicant if they wish to appeal their assessment, the process why they're here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this is a public hearing, and this is where, as part of this letter, we had given notice to the residents that they have rights under the state statute 429 to appeal the assessment if they do not feel that there is a benefit to the property. So that is this property owner's right, is to give notice tonight before the close of the public hearing, as well if they feel, anybody who's here doesn't feel that the assessment is fair.
Yep, and if you'd like to retain that right, we would need a letter, and we'd be happy to work with staff on that.
And it just needs to be handwritten tonight. You could write it on an envelope, or I can get you a piece of paper just saying you reserve your right to object or appeal. I'll work with you on that.
Name and address, and reserve my right, and we would accept that just like the previous resident.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. Counselor, you have a question?
Mr. Mayor, oh, sorry.
The mayor, the city attorney is addressing you.
Okay.
Attorney.
Huh?
City attorney is addressing the
Okay.
council.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I just want to make sure that the two people that have, looks like they might be submitting written objections know that there is a very short time frame after tonight in which to file and perfect their appeal, and that's 30 days that they have to file it with the court and also serve the city. So they should be aware of that timetable also tonight.
Mayor and council, we have certification from the administrative assistant that letters went out to all the property owners informing them exactly of these rights under the state statutes with instructions and that 30-day guideline as well for submitting the assessment and serving the city notice.
Counselor Lehman, does that answer your question?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure we're following due process and everybody knows what it is.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Anybody else
Mayor?
like to come forward and make comment on this assessment?
Mayor?
I'm sorry, Counselor Brennan?
Yep, I have a question regarding that property. I'm trying to find it on the final assessment roll, and I don't know which page that's on, that address.
Just 1 minute.
This partial parcel number here?
Just
Mayor and Council, on page, it would be 29 of 196 in your council agenda. It's on that page, approximately middle, halfway down or a little bit further, 279190070. It is indeed on the assessment roll provided to you.
Oh, okay, I got it. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Just a point of order here. The gentleman, did you submit your letter? Okay, oh, okay, that's fine. I'm sorry. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Mars. Thank you, Council. I'm a resident in the Dominion Hills area. Been out there about 17 years now at 2395 Peace Circle. And I'm listening to the conversation and understanding that there's a benefit to me. And a number was just shared of $12,500 relative to a $9,500. So it's really a savings for me. And I guess I'd like some clarification on what that benefit is. Does that come in resale value? Does that come in less wear and tear on my vehicle, a better curb appeal, or where maybe does that come from?
I believe it comes on the value of your market value on your tax value developed by the county.
Okay.
We did have a short segment of the extension of Wood Duck Trail last year, and it was kind of an expensive emergency repair because the street failed. And we had deemed that some of those assessments might have been over the benefit. And so I think in that case, I think we capped them so that there was a direct benefit proportionally to the assessments to your value of your lot and home. We believe here that these assessments here that are proposed deliver that benefit and more. And we just gave an example of that 12,000 and now it's 9,500, and it appears like a savings, but we do feel that an improved road would have your market value in your home go up.
Okay. As we speak to that market value and we talk about the real estate tax portion. So I decide to net this assessment fee. What do my taxes look like in 2021? That full value gets layered against my new taxable value of my home?
And as your value goes up, proportionally, the taxes go up.
So you would fully layer that fee?
I guess that's one way to look at it. I'm a firm believer that I want my house to increase in value, and I do know that my maintenance would stay the same, but I also understand that taxes would rise proportionally, given depending on the levy of all the factors of city, county, and the school district.
Mayor?
Councilor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that the cost on any project that's assessed is 30%. The 70% is actually being picked up by the rest of the taxpayers of Shakopee. And in some cases, some of these areas in town aren't accessed on a daily basis by many residents. So I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that our policy has 30% for the properties like mine was and Councilor Whiting's was, and 70% is picked up by the taxpayers at large.
Very good, clearly understood. But again, we're in a dead-end cul-de-sac neighborhood of, again, large properties.
Yeah.
By design when it was originally built.
Yeah.
Acres of 2.5 and larger only. Therefore, the taxes since 1997 when my house was built have been proportionately higher, correct? And much of that money has gone to supporting these other programs that now I'm being told are supporting me, right?
Well, we spread 70% of the cost over the taxpayer base, And then as a true person that benefits by a road improvement, a full reconstruction, you benefit, we assess you 30%. Are you part of the 70? I guess.
Every day.
Right. But I'm not part of the 30% because I don't own your home and that improvement in your area. But we feel in our city, it's been a long-standing policy, the 70-30 policy. Other cities may assess or not in a different way, and that's been Shakopee's policy for a long time.
Okay, very good. And I appreciate the explanation that Ryan provided on the reason for the 5%. You know, the fact that it's rate plus, you know, an admin fee, so.
Thank you very much.
Yep, very good.
This is a public hearing. Would anybody else like to come forward and talk about this proposed assessment? Thank you. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for allowing me to speak. My name is Scott Nielsen. I live on 2425 Peace Circle. I'm a neighbor to Blaine. I, too, have some of the same concerns that Blaine has. First of all, I'd like to say that they did a marvelous job out there. Mueller and Sons were very accommodating to all the people out there. They did a great job working with the community out there to really help us, you know, be in and out of our property and be minimally invasive as they could be. I would challenge again, I'm back in the corner there next to Blaine, and Mr. Elverson, you brought up that you thought the frontages out there are 400 foot plus, and I would challenge that mine's like 60. So it doesn't seem fair to me, you know, given the frontage that I have there, that based on, you look at some of the other properties and the size of the road, that seems like a fair assessment to me. I guess you answered a lot of my next questions to Mr. Worth earlier. I would like to, if there's somebody who could tell me what's the benefit to me to pay the $9,500 now when almost to a gentleman here who was saying I'm probably either going to be in the grave or probably living somewhere else within 10 years. What's the advantage of me to pay the $9,500 plus up front as absorbing it?
Save the interest?
Save the interest, but how is that going to, it almost seems, again, you're paying the taxes, and it almost seems like there's a double dip going there to me. But to me, if I'm only going to be there a couple more years, what's the advantage to me to pay $9,500 up front?
It's a choice, but Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, it's just one of the options that we offer, sir. You know, I would encourage everyone to look at their personal situation and determine what is in your best interest, and then make that decision.
Is there any way that you guys can help us with that decision?
Well, I think the interest should be a factor. You know, when you buy a new house, just an example, sometimes they put the appliance package built into the house and the mortgage. And then you're buying a washer, dryer, stove, a fridge, and putting it on a 30-year mortgage. Well, they don't make durable goods like they used to. And those appliances will probably wear out, yet you're still paying for them in your mortgage, and you're gonna go out and buy new appliances. I know that's just one style of example. I do know that when you sell your house, that your prorated taxes are your responsibility and need to be paid. And so it's do you want to pay up front? Do you want to pay over time? And there is a charge for that of interest. I can't really make the decision. I can tell you pros and cons of each, right?
Okay. Okay, I'd just like to, here's my letter of appeal.
Yeah.
And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. If I can share a little information. Years ago, prior to buying this house, my wife and I were house hunting, and we found a good deal on a house here in Shakopee, not this house. And in the process of checking into that house prior to purchasing it, we found out that the city's capital improvement plan had road reconstruction in the future all the way around that two-lotted property, including the alley. and that we would have had excessive future assessments, would we have purchased that home? Good part of having a capital improvement plan that's detailed so that people can make educated purchasing decisions. In this case, if this road is complete and somebody's looking to purchase this house 2 or 3 years from now, they're going to know that they're not going to have a future road project in front of this house for at least 15, 20 years. So they can make a good educated purchasing decision. And that also could in fact drive up the cost or the price of that house because it doesn't carry that potential liability moving forward. On the other side, if you purchase a home and the road in front of the house is really, really tough shape, it's a pretty good bet that the purchaser is going to say, you know what? That road is in pretty tough shape. They're probably going to come fix it. I'm going to end up paying a portion of that. Can you please drop the price of this house to cover my anticipated cost of this road improvement in the future? So there's some of the realities of the real estate market, and having that information in detail available in them decisions.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Anybody else like to come forward and make comment in regard to this? Seeing none, we're probably going to move to close the public hearing, but I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to drop that letter to reserve the right to appeal. It would have to be part of the public record before the close of the public hearing. And then we've already have a couple. Seeing none, councilors, Councilor Whiting,
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Contreras. Further discussion? 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 All in favor, say aye, or by voice vote.
Councilmember Brennan.
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras.
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting.
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you very much. The public hearing is now closed. How would we like to proceed? Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I'll offer resolution R 2020-128 adopting assessments for the 2020 full depth pavement reconstruction project CIF 20-004.
Whiting, second.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Whiting. Further discussion?
Yeah, we got a follow up, Mayor.
Councilor Lehman?
In the memo, it says policy action requested, and it also has a different number on the resolution. Am I reading that wrong? Better question, was that the right resolution for the motion?
He's reading it
Are you referring to the CIF number?
Correct.
The resolution is R2020 TAC 128, Councilor Lehman.
Thank you, sir. Then my motion to adopt resolution R 2020-128. And who is the second?
So I thought you said.
I agree, I concur.
All right. So we're good on the motion with the motion maker and the second? And in regard to the resolution for R 2020-128? Further discussion? Discussion? Discussion by voice vote?
Councilmember Brennan.
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras.
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting.
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much for the discussion. Appreciate it. Let's move ahead then to 7B, which is a public hearing for currency exchange license of Excel Pond. And Counselor Lehman.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to open a public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote.
Councilmember Brennan.
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras.
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting.
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Thank you very much. Public hearing is now open, and who's presenting? Nate?
Mayor Mars, the request is to approve currency exchange license for Excel Pawn. The police department has reviewed and has approved. So I guess we'd look for opening the public hearing.
Okay. Questions of staff? I see that our police chief has advised he's unaware of any reason for the city to object the granting of this license to Excel Pond. This is an annual renewal or just a new license?
That I am unsure of, Mayor. I
I
believe
believe
it's,
this is an annual renewal.
Yes.
Mayor Mars.
It's his renewal.
it's an
Okay,
annual.
annual renewal?
Yep.
Other questions of staff? Questions of staff? Seeing none, this is a public hearing. Would the representative from Excel Pond like to come forward, make comment? Would any resident like to come forward and make comment in regard to this item? Seeing none, Counselor Lehman?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Brennan. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote.
Councilmember Brennan.
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras.
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting.
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Public hearing's now closed. Counselor Contreras?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution R 2020-131, a resolution approving the application of XL Pawn Inc., DBA XL Pawn and Jewelry at 450 West First Avenue for currency exchange license.
A second.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Brennan. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote.
Councilmember Brennan.
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras.
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting.
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you all very much. Item number 8, I would offer or entertain a motion to recess to our Economic Development Authority meeting.
Mr.
Counselor
Mayor,
Lehman.
I'll make a motion for a short recess.
Second.
I have a motion for a short recess and a second by Counselor Brennan. And after we come back, we would go to our EDA meeting. Further discussion by voice vote.
Councilmember Brennan.
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras.
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting.
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. We stand in recess. will reconvene the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for November 4th, 2020. And coming back out of recess, and we will, to break. And now I would entertain a motion to recess to our EDA. Counselor Lehman. You're on mute, or?
You're on mute, Counselor Lyman.
No, I'm not. Motion to recess EDA meeting.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Contreras. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote.
Councilmember Brennan.
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras.
Where's Michael?
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman.
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Mayor Mars, aye. We stand in recess, and Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to call to order the November 4th, 2020 meeting of the Shakopee Economic Development Authority. Please make note of the roll. Next on our agenda is item 2, approval of the agenda. Mr. Lehman.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Contreras. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Brennan, or sorry, Commissioner Brennan.
Jody, you're muted.
Aye.
Commissioner Lehman.
Aye.
Commissioner Contreras.
Aye.
Commissioner Mars.
Aye.
President Whiting.
Aye. Next on the agenda is item 3, consent business, which includes the EDA minutes. Mr. Lehman.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Contreras. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Contreras.
Aye.
Commissioner Lehman.
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan.
Aye.
Commissioner Mars.
Aye.
President Whiting.
Aye. Thank you. Next on the agenda, item 4A, business subsidy policy update. Mr. Kursky.
Mr. President, board members, about 6 months ago, we discussed this and you asked us to bring this back with a modification based on a livable wage. In doing our research, and I think back in the discussion, $24 an hour would be the average minimum. We would also deduct out the senior management people, and the jobs would also have to include health benefits beyond the $24 an hour. So that means someone would be making roughly $50,000 a year on the average. Some of you remember this started out, I think when I came 4 years ago, it was $14, then it went to $16, then it went to $19, and we're at $20 right now, so this would be a $4 increase.
Thank you, Mr. Kursky. Do companies have to hold that wage for the entirety of a business subsidy program?
President and board members, yes. So every year they have to give us a certified payroll, which we review. It lists every job classification along with their hourly wage, annual wage if it's a salary, and then what benefits they're being provided.
Any other questions of staff? Mr. Lehman?
Is that the only change to the existing policy, or is the existing policy, as I'm reading it, have multiple other changes to it?
Mr. President, board members, no. The only change are underlined in your policy, which are the modification of the hourly wage, and then also including the deletion of any senior management staff from that average hourly wage, and also including the requirement for health benefits. I think we heard at the last workshop that we wanted to make sure that there was no additional burden placed upon the community by having provide some sort of health benefit in the community. Otherwise, the policy stands.
Mr. Kursky, that would exclude the health benefits, $24 with the health benefit included, not as part of the wage.
Correct. So it's you would earn $24 an hour plus your health benefit. Right. So it's not included in the hourly wage.
Right. Any other questions?
Mr. President, so I think I know a couple council members, colleagues that have been wanting to do this and actually truly raise that minimum wage. And then we discussed that I think in today's world that benefits are a big item, and so I support this at 24 plus those benefits to be in our subsidized program.
Any other comments? I guess I have a question. How many people are really looking at this program? Are we already priced out for anybody really taking a look at it? Or it's not a good time to be doing that, obviously, right now, but what has been the temperature of businesses looking at our subsidy plan, Mr. Kursky?
Mr. President, board members, I think the last one you did was for KEB was for an expansion, and then so their wages had to match, I believe then it was $19 an hour for the new jobs. And then Cherney is our most recent one. They have $150 new jobs to the community at an average wage of $20 an hour. So the big change in this would be the increase to $24 an hour, and then have the requirement for health benefits. I think our goal right now is we still have some pretty large distribution folks looking here, and I think it's a good cushion when they ask for something that we have a policy in place that basically we can say no. So if you want to be here, you need to figure out how to make the numbers work on your side. And there's one looking right now, and they'll just have to figure it out, because even at $18 or $20 an hour, they don't have that many jobs to begin with. They take up a lot of land and resources in the community, and I think this is a really good benchmark for the community and sends a good message.
Mr. Lehman, you had a question?
Mr. President, a couple of points. First, I support it because if we're going to give tax dollars away to entice jobs in our community, these jobs need to pay a wage to where the people working these jobs aren't eligible for other taxpayer subsidies, services. Otherwise, we're defeating the whole purpose of bringing the jobs here. Bringing the jobs here is supposed to create an opportunity for those on the lower rung of the economic scale to have that opportunity to move up the economic scale. And so I think that's a good thing. But I also recognize, as Mayor Mars might, and yourself, Mr. Whiting, that sometimes economic conditions do change and you have to adjust to meet the current economic situation. And I'm sure that, our staff is going to be fluid to that should we have a depression, let's say, or should the economy just leaps and bounds in the upward scales, that we would try to keep pace with that in our policy, in the wage aspect. So I'm not stuck on this one wage, because I think things do change and you have to modify accordingly. And that's what I think we're doing right now, so.
Mr. President, board members, I was not here at the time, but during the last Great Recession, this is when you dropped it down to $14 an hour, I think, to reflect what Councilmember Lehman's talking about. Wages had dropped considerably during that time. We are, despite the pandemic, I think Shakopee is somewhat of an island at the moment, and we are still attracting a significant amount of growth and jobs.
Ms. Brennan, you had a question or a comment?
I don't have any questions, but I appreciate the fact that we brought this forward a few months ago, and that you've incorporated it into the policy. So I appreciate that you're listening to us and figuring out a way to get it done.
When we started this, when I started 9 years ago, it was kind of that pendulum of the economy swinging the other way, and we did a TIF for a nice chunk of property that brought in some good jobs, not the highest paying, but it was a good company to work for, and we appreciated that. I don't know that I'd do that again. The good thing is that TIF is going to be paying off here in the next year or two, so taxes will be all collected on that. But the pendulum does swing, and right now I think if we're going to use that tool, we want to bring in a company that's going to bring in employees that have the value to give them that benefit. But any other comments?
Mr. President,
Mr. Mars?
Yeah, I'm just looking at where we've been, where we're going as a community, and I think this is good policy. It matches part of Envision Shakopee, our comp plan where we want to start to drive those jobs on the higher end. Also, this plays an important part in our strategic plan that we looked at last year, something that we can benchmark policy and then we can track and see that. Obviously, we're hearing about livable wages and things like that. So I think for an economic development and to get some assistance from the city, I call it an investment in our community, but it takes two, and we might give a little bit, but we want something in return that's going to be a direct benefit to the job holders in our community. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve this new updated policy to raise the wage to $24 plus benefits and exclude senior management positions.
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second by Brennan. Any more discussion? 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 By voice vote?
Commissioner Brennan,
Aye.
Commissioner Contreras,
Aye.
Commissioner Lehman,
Aye.
Commissioner Mars,
Aye.
President Whiting.
Aye. Thank you for that discussion. It has been talked about a few times, so I'm glad we got that in front of everybody. Next, item 5, reports. We have the EDA bill list. Is there any questions on that, or?
Mr. President, I had one. Was the demolition cost right about where we were expecting for the riverfront, or was it higher or lower?
Mr. President, board members, it was exactly spot on, and I give major props to Fratellone. They were in and out of there. They did a remarkable job cleaning up that site.
Thank you.
It was quick, that was for sure. Do we have any timeline on the next phase? Sorry, Mr. Gursky.
Mr. President, board members, we have the dueling lawyers finishing up the agreements, and we're hoping to get a closing in the next 3 or 4 days, and we will be scheduling a groundbreaking for the project after that.
All right, thank you for that. You can sit down now. All right, is there anything else in front of this board?
Mr. President, I'll offer a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, December 1st, 2020 at 7 p.m.
We'll accept Mr. Mars' motion. Is there a second? Ms. Brennan, we have a second. Any discussion? Discussion. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Brennan,
Aye.
Commissioner Contreras,
Aye.
Commissioner Lehman,
Aye.
Commissioner Mars,
Aye.
President Whiting.
All right, we stand adjourned.
We will reconvene the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for November 4th, 2020. And we just completed our EDA meeting. And now we're going to move ahead to 10A1, which is a strategic initiative for brand and image. And
Can you see the presentation?
No.
Was that a yes?
No.
No.
okay, we're working on it. And then while we're doing that, just want to make a mention that Nate will present when we're ready. All right, we can all see that? Thank you. Nate?
All right, thank you, Mayor and council members. This is a relatively brief update, and I don't want to, it might seem a little bit daunting, but it's not quite as heavy as it may seem. Back when the council adopted the strategic plan, one of the strategic initiatives was for us to work on brand and image. So this was one of the kind of first initiatives that we were doing, a lot of things keyed off of this. The reason why, if you can go back a slide, Michael, just to remind you as to why this ended up in the strategic plan, was that we were looking at some community survey results that kind of showed a low image. We kind of thought that there was some cognitive dissonance where people saw things and thought things that we could prove out with data weren't exactly true about the community. We needed to do a better job of identifying ourselves overall, kind of deciding who we actually want to be as both a community and an organization. And then we needed to have a better methodology to kind of accentuate the strengths of both the community and the organization. This will also lead to more consistent communications because following after this initiative, the council's asked us to do a strategic, or what I'll call a tactical communications plan, where we actually take some of these concepts that we're talking about today and put them to work. So when we're talking about brand, a couple of things that you need to know about what we need it to be. On the left-hand side, we need our brand to be authentic. We can't pretend to be something that we're not. We're Shakopee. We're not Nashville, Tennessee. We're not Edina. We're not Minnetonka. We're not any other community. We're Shakopee. So we need to be authentic to ourselves. We don't need to go pretending that and trying to say that we're something that we're not, because that's going to come off as being false, clearly. Our brand needs to be convincing. That's in line with being authentic, but we need to be able to say it concisely, and we need to be able to show people in, a tweet or less what it is that we're trying to convey. Our brand should be inclusive, meaning people should be able to understand it, whether they are business owners, residents, children, adults, people from outside of the community. It needs to be inclusive. We need to be consistent in the way that we use it, and it also needs to be versatile because there are a lot of different people that we are trying to reach. What it should be doing is we need to be able to communicate our values and what Shakopee has to offer. It's extraordinarily important that we have a brand because in today's economy, where it's very global, people can make lots of different decisions about where they want to live. They can make decisions about where they want to put their business, and they can do just about anywhere. And we need to show people why they should be choosing Shakopee. And then finally, having a good brand, having a strong brand, having a consistent brand builds trust. When we are consistent in saying this is who we are, this is who we want to be, this is why we're doing what we're doing, it's going to build trust with the community because it's going to be consistent. So I need to differentiate a little bit here the difference between brand and image. When you talk about brand, you're talking about things that are in your control. You think about logos, you think about colors, you think about the way that we talk. Image isn't 100% in your control. That's how people interpret your brand. Brand is how we choose to look. Those are our logos and our colors, and we are not in control of how people interpret those things. Brand's how we choose to act, how we choose to talk, and what we choose to do. Image is how people interpret our brand. Brand is the thing we're in control of, and image is the dial that we're trying to move in a particular direction. You always have to remember as well that we have one brand, but there are a couple of different perspectives that we're working with. Both the perspective of residents and businesses within the community and people outside of the community. As we're out there recruiting other businesses to come into the community, they're going to look at our brand and they're going to say, is this someplace that I want my business to be? Am I going to be able to recruit people to come work here in my business in Shakopee? So we have those perspectives, and then we also have the perspective of how are people perceiving the organization, the city of Shakopee as an organization. So we're thinking about the community on one hand, and we're also thinking about the organization of the city. So this isn't super, we aren't planning to make a really big change to our proposed brand. And what I'm offering up here today is kind of what I'll call a foundation for how our brand will be moving forward. And I just want to kind of do a touch point to see if the council supports these concepts. As you can see, we're not really proposing to do away with the logo as you know it. We're not really proposing to change the colors, but what you'll see that's different there is the words innovating, entertaining, and thriving. Those are the three words that we are proposing to try to focus on as Shakopee's brand. So I'll tell you a little bit about how we came through all of this process. I had a multidisciplinary team that had representation from all of the departments, and we went through a couple of meetings, and we kind of drilled down to what is Shakopee, who is Shakopee, and these are the words that we came up with. And this is kind of what we think it means. To us, it means innovating means that Shakopee has a deep and diverse group of innovative businesses within the community, and that our community is innovative in and of itself. And then also that the city is an innovative organization. And then on the right side, I've just listed a couple of things that kind of prove out that Shakopee is in fact a innovative community. Our proactive policing unit gets awards, it seems like, every year. The sewer lining project that we keep talking about was very innovative and copied throughout the state. We're completely paperless in our permitting, which is unique to cities. Academies of Shakopee, our innovation center idea, and then there are a couple of businesses right there that are very innovative within the community themselves. Entertaining, obviously, we have been known as the land of big fun, but we aren't necessarily talking about that. What we're talking about is that Shakopee is a unique entertainment destination as a community. We have some family-focused things, we have some adult-focused things, but there is something for everyone here. The city is, and then from the city's perspective, we're an organization that wants to build communities. So this entertaining concept is actually from the city organizational perspective about building community, bringing people together post-COVID, of course, and supporting our entertainment destinations. You don't have to look very far to see all of the things that support the fact that Shakopee is an entertaining place to be. Obviously, Valley Fair and Canterbury, but our parks and trails and system is second to none. Our sports, you're all aware, we host statewide tournaments all of the time at our fields here, and we have lots of tournaments for children in soccer, and we have very strong sports community here. Our dining options are improving over time, and then we have a lot of events here that people really like to come to. Rhythm on the Rails is a great example. Other things like that. We bring people together. We do an amazing job with Night to Unite, and that's what all of this entertaining is about. It's not just what we've kind of thought about entertaining in the past, which is, the big Canterbury and Valley Fair. This is about knitting the community together, as it says in Envision Shakopee. Thriving is really about individuals and families and opportunity. It's kind of interesting. We found out we were talking a lot about the word opportunity and how we wanted to use it. But then we found out that there isn't really a direct translation for the word welcoming was the word that we were trying to use. There isn't actually a direct translation for the word welcoming into Spanish. And it kind of struck us that we needed to find another word, not just because of Spanish, but because we needed to find a word that translated well to everybody in the community. And thriving is really about Shakopee being a safe, diverse, and welcoming community that's economically strong, giving people opportunities to thrive within the community. And then this organization is going to support that. You can look at the ways that Shakopee is currently thriving. Our equity team is really starting to get a foothold. We have the Diversity Alliance. Our CAPS and academies are amazing. I mean, there's more going on there, integrating, people together through CAPS and the academies program than you can know. Community policing and our safety within the community is helping the community to thrive. We have a strong economy, and it's an affordable community. So those are the three basic pillars, and that's just kind of a very broad overview of what we're proposing. Is we're proposing using those three basic pillars to kind of build our communications tactical plan going forward. So, like I said, this information is just a touch point to get your ideas to see how you feel about those three primary concepts. We're not planning on doing a large-scale rebrand. It's not a huge, completely eliminating the old logo. We're just building off of what we already have. Today, I'm asking again for input and guidance, and then in the next 90 days, we would be working on building that tactical plan around these concepts and then bring that back to you.
Great. Thanks, Nate. Questions of staff? Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, the word that comes to my mind is inviting, and he covered it in thriving. But in the words underneath with the logo, I didn't see anything that told me that we're inviting people here. Can you put that first slide back up again? Innovating, entertaining, and thriving. So, I mean, you covered it in thriving, but thriving to me almost sounds like we're bragging, which is okay, but we should be. But we're inviting, aren't we?
I think that's
Doesn't this make you wanna? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Counselor. I was just going to say, I think that is a basic part of thriving, Counselor Lehman. And we certainly can put more things. The problem is that if we start adding more pieces, it's more difficult to manage. You really want 3 to something like that, as small. But your point is right on, and it's a good point, and certainly something to consider. We need to make sure that we emphasize the thriving part. It's not so much about, and we need to be careful about bragging. It's not so much that as that, you know, we are being successful because we're welcoming, because we are doing things that make people want to be here.
That's Counselor Whiting?
No, thank you. Sorry for interrupting there, but the words kind of innovating, entertaining, and thriving kind of create an inviting atmosphere, which I think was the goal here. And the brand that, Shakopee is, you're being invited to all these different, innovating, thriving community. And, with the police awards and things like that, I really like the idea, but I really want to make sure we're, selling it. I mean, how do we get others to see it? Well, we got to sell it. And I think the marketing behind this, and I know we've got a great team that put this together, but can carry it through for the next to the next level. And I think that support and momentum is important for something like this.
Thank you. I guess, the word welcoming, it's in our vision statement, right? Recreational opportunities in a safe, welcoming, attractive environment for residents and visitors. It's quoted right out of our vision statement. But if we did work with our strategic plan on our new vision statement and our mission, but to drill it even down on brand, if I saw a community that had a word attached to it that was innovative, I would be interested in that. I would want to go there. I don't need to be told I'm welcoming. I would go, well, they're innovative. I want to see what they're innovative on. And I think even thriving, I like that word because of it. It's got a pulse. It's thriving. Something's happening. I got to go there, right? I like that. I think the entertainment aspect was interesting to read because it covered more than our major 4, right? And you're correct. We have a lot of other events. We have normally a very big high school cross-country race here along the Minnesota River. We have a big soccer complex that we draw several thousand people to in a big tournament. I think that extends to what you were saying, like family and the visitors, and it's not all just well, I'm gonna go to Valley Fair and ride on some rides or go watch some horses. I like the depth of how you put entertainment. I like this because I think we can promote our brand, strengthen our brand. I always think that we should be champions for our community because we have a lot to offer. I think we can brag because of the words that we're using. We have a whole case over there full of awards and trophies that in the last 5 years, and it's because we're thriving, it's because we're innovating internally. We've also been recognized as a top city, right? Top places to live is the right wording on that. So I like this. Councilor Contreras?
Hey, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I'll look at it a different way. And I see what Councilor Lehman is saying on the word welcoming. But the way it was a good thing. I like it. It was a good thing. What I'm trying to say is that the way we're using and the way we're selling it, we are welcoming, different people to come in to our innovating and entertaining and thriving city. So I like it. I actually like it. And I'm looking at it as like, if we, brand it this way, we are telling everybody, hey, we're this, we're that. Come, you're welcome to be here. So I like it.
Councilor Brennan?
I appreciate your comments about how to connect the general population to the word city, because I think most people don't see themselves as the city. So when I talk to people and they'll say, oh, the city is doing this, or, and it's like, well, you are the city, you are the city. And I think those words are a bridge to bring people into that conversation. I like that. Innovating is really one of my favorite words in the strategic plan. I think that really showcases who we are, who we want our businesses to be, who we want our residents to be, and our supporting organizations like SPUC and the school district and the Chamber of Commerce. And I think all of those organizations have an opportunity to be innovating. Parks are entertaining, and I like that that's brought into entertaining, and thriving is just, it's what we all want. It's what each individual wants is to be thriving. So I appreciate all three of those words. So thank you.
Thank you. Follow-up, Councilor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. The word I used wasn't welcoming, it was inviting. And yeah, it probably means the same thing, but mine is basically telegraphing that we want you to come this way. You're invited. That being said, we need to be careful that, as Councilor Brennan said, that we're trying to tell the citizens what we want them to be. We got to be very careful because we as an elected body have constituents that are to tell us what they want us to be. So that's a two-way street, and it's very important that we don't lose sight of that other side that tells us what inviting us as a community to be.
I agree, Councilor Lehman. That was not my point. My point was it's setting a culture. It's creating a culture, and we're being innovative, we're being entertaining, and we're being thriving, and we're bringing those people to the table to have that conversation, and and not just to exclude ourselves from those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you try to sit back and think about what we are, staff is putting some ideas together, and you may say that staff is telling us what we are, but actually I look at it a different way. What are other people telling us about our community. And this kind of gets down back to the awards. So we won a major award for our Envision Shakopee Comp Plan. That award was given out by the State Association of Planners, I believe. Is that correct? So there's an outside organization looking at our plan and awarding us. So that's third party. It's not staff. It's not us. It's some third party telling us what we are. I believe our park master plan won an award. That too was awarded by an outside agency in that field. This most recent award by the top city, by money.com, is really a big deal. And to rank 30 out of a couple thousand cities and only 50 were listed, again, that's a national organization looking at our city and what we have to offer and telling and then rating us. We played no role in that. I think that's third-party influence. I think that is great. And then I actually can bring it back home to innovate, and we are innovating, whether it's businesses or even here at City Hall, which I think is vitally important, organic innovation within an organization about our credit card policy. And again, then the local police department wins three awards actually, with the City of Excellence by the League of Minnesota Cities, but we won an FBI award for that, and I believe there was one other. To me, that's not staff telling us. It's not us telling, that's outside forces looking at the city and the organization and saying, here's an award. So I think we got something going. I think it's there. We are innovative. I think we've innovated more in the last 5 years than we have in the last 20. But Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, that's great that outside forces can look in and have an opinion, but I don't want to lose sight of the inside forces and their opinion, because that's really who we serve.
Okay, Councilor Whiting?
Now, Mr. Mayor, you brought up a good point with the police awards. You know, there's so much discussion around community policing and police and defunding this and that. Our police force should be the model, and we win awards because people look up to us as a model. And I really think that that should be sold and shared and maybe taught, and that could be also innovating and part of our brand and showing that we are thriving and our community is doing things right, like policing. So I think our team that put this together, cross-functional, did a great job boiling it down to some real intriguing words and branding that I think we can really work with.
All right. More discussion. I think we've built some strong consensus here, and you know, I think what would be the next step then? Would we see this back, Nate?
Well, yeah, I'm glad for your input, and it sounds like strong support. So now we'll take the steps to put together a tactical plan for how we will deploy the brand, you know, because we really do need to be able to show people and why we're saying we're innovative, why we're saying we're entertaining, why we're saying we're thriving, and be consistent about that. So we figure that'll take about 3 months. Kristen's on the call if she wants to weigh in, because that's going to be her baby. Yeah, you could expect to see kind of, now that we have this foundation, here are the nuts and bolts of how we kind of plan to do this.
Okay. All right, so we'll probably see this back, and thank you all very much. It's a non-action item just for discussion and provide guidance, so thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Nate, did you say Kristen wanted to weigh in on this? Or
If she wants
in the
to, she
future?
can, but she hasn't unmuted, so I'm guessing she doesn't.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all. Moving ahead then to 10A2, refuge and recycling discussion. And Nate, welcome back.
Well, thank you. I didn't prepare a presentation for this discussion because I think you're all pretty aware of the issues, and I wrote everything that I would say into the memo. I did want to have a conversation with you right now about what you kind of broadly envision as the future for refuse and recycling in Shakopee. I kind of see three options as listed in that memo. One would be that we would begin to negotiate a contract extension with Republic. One would be that we prepare an RFP and go out for bid again. And then the third one would be that we start the process of considering how we might unwind the organized system and go back to an open system. So with that, I mean, I'd stand for questions, but I think that's just, it's primarily for you to kind of give me guidance as to which direction to go.
And so it's 2020, and you have a timeline that if we went out for bid again, we're 14 months away from that. And just to work on that timeline, the last time we truly went out for RFP was 6 years ago, right? 2014?
The RFP, I believe, was issued in 2012.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe 2013. And it was a full 8 to 9 month transitional period.
Right. I apologize that we awarded the contract in 2014, so the process was ahead of that. So, as someone that's been active in the community, I find that garbage in every city is a big issue, right? For some reason. And whether it's organized or not, it's like a utility bill, but boy, does it get a lot of play. So with that, we can have discussion. Councilor Whiting?
I want to put out first thing that I have no interest in opening up to an open collection system. I think that battle has been fought. It's over with. To me, having the trash trucks come down the road once a week, they go one way, and then the recycling truck, of course, too. But the wear and tear on the roads, the different trash people pointing the finger at each other, I have no interest in opening that up. But I'll leave the rest of the discussion to talk about. But it's quite a quagmire if we open this up to proposals. It's going to take Nate and probably somebody else quite a bit of time to negotiate through some of the different proposals. So I'd be more inclined to work with Republic Services.
Thank you.
Mayor Mars.
Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I just wanted to talk a little bit and make sure people understand why, we're even in the business, if you will, of trash. Under Minnesota law, we are responsible for ensuring that every resident has trash service. And, there are pluses and minuses to each of these proposals. The real big problem with an open system is the verification process for determining whether or not a resident has service. And, as I'm sure that you recognize that in the past, do we get complaints? Of course we get complaints. We get complaints on trash on occasion. But before, we probably got complaints about illegal dumping. And we probably got complaints about somebody putting trash in their trash bin as opposed to having their own trash bin. So there are pluses and minuses to all three of these. But generally, the real stumbling block on a totally open system would be finding a way to making sure that we're verifying that everybody has trash service. And again, that's a state requirement.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. We can just go around here and offer input. Councilor Contreras?
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't get to, work with the other processes before, but now I just remember in January of 2019 receiving emails of some complaints when we talked about this before. And I kind of went back and I did a little more research, and I asked from the emails that I got, and I said, hey, can you give me more? Can we talk a little more? And they, some responses I received were that issues were at the beginning, things got fixed. And I think the only thing I've heard now is if we just had a I know we have a representative that Nate works with, but if I was supposed, if I were to call right now, it goes to some national number. If we had someone local to call, when you dial, have a local place. I think that's the only thing, but I feel that I would also go for negotiating and extending with Republic Services and just working out that, having that one local place to call to, not somewhere else. I think that's my idea.
So I'm going to ask a question of our tenured council members. In the last 15 years, we've had, or 20 years, we've had closed, competitively bid contracts with 2 different suppliers. My question really is, regardless of who the contract is, are the issues with the previous contracted hauler or the current one, are the issues all the same?
No.
Yes?
No.
No? Okay, different issues?
Yeah. Can we continue around the room?
Okay. Councilor Whiting?
No, I think there are always some of the same issues, but I do agree that we had some different issues with the last service than we do now. Before that, I remember, I wasn't on the council, but I remember the service before that, and it was quite a mess, leaving around town and things like that too. So there's always issues, but if we can find a company that we can work with, and I think Republic has showed some of that. So go ahead.
Councilor Lehman?
I might be a little bit longer winded on this topic only because I come with so much history of it. First and foremost, I'd love to have an open system because I think the free markets drive competition, which drives lower prices and better service. If I don't like the person that's servicing me, I can fire them and get somebody else. If I don't like the price, I can have them compete against somebody else for my business, and I get a better rate. That being said, the open system worked very well for many years until there came a time when, people were putting their garbage in somebody else's garbage because they didn't have one in it, saved themselves some money, which created a problem on the responsible person. And there was a lot of dumping, and that cost everybody in the city, taxpayers, the cleanup cost and disposal. I totally recognize the road issue. You could have 5 different trucks coming 5 different days if you have an open system. That's tearing up alleys, more tax dollars being spent on alleys for maintenance, more money being spent on roads, shorter road lives. I get it. So I'm not necessarily opposed to a closed system for all those reasons. The problem that we have with our closed system is basically contract issues. And I think we are obligated to bid out and try to get the best pricing we possibly can for our constituents. Now, we had a 5-year contract with Republic, and we renewed it. We didn't even, we might have tweaked a couple things in the contract, made some things better, but we didn't really address everything we've learned in a closed system all these years. So I think we need to try to address these issues in the contract if we're going to remain in a closed system and bid it out in an effort to try to get better rates for our constituents and really to address the issues, some of them issues that, as staff is well aware of. We've got seniors living by themselves that are required to have a garbage can they couldn't fill up in 2 months. And they have very little options on how to reduce their cost for a service they really don't need, but they're forced to have. Okay? We have a provider now whose trucks are almost twice the size of our last provider, tearing up roads, tearing up alleys. We have requested as a city, smaller trucks in circumstances because of the situations. So I think we have a unique opportunity to try to do multiple things. We can try to get a better rate for our constituents. We could try to have a contract that has more consumer-friendly options, if you will, and that makes sense, and still provide these services that are required by state law. We also need to be looking at the snowbird situation. We need to be looking at some residents can go every other week instead of every week because they don't have the requirement and the need, and their bill should reflect that. So I think we've got an opportunity to improve quite a bit on what we have, and I think we can do that with the information we have over the years. And I think we need to keep our constituents' best interest at heart here. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Councilor Brennan?
There's a lot of things that I like about Republic. I like the larger recycling can and just the timing. I've never had any issues with it. I do know that I have three trucks that go through my neighborhood every week. So if I think about another 2 or 3 providers, that's a lot of trucks that are going through the neighborhood. But I also agree that competition is good, and I would like to see a couple of RFPs that are put together to see if who else is available and what else is available, and maybe something can come out of that would drive a change in the way that it's done currently.
I just want to be on the record. I don't have a specific issue with Republic. It's not their service or anything like that. I'm just saying, and they might be the best for the job even. So I just wanted to make that clear. I'm just trying to make it better for our constituents.
Right. Well, that's why I was trying to ask the issues if it was carrier Pacific. I think that staff has probably gotten a lot of data about the pain points and what those are. I think a lot of them are customer service. We've seen some billing issues. We saw the size of the truck options. And maybe we're learning, right? What those pain points out and we can work on it. But I wanted to get, Councilor Contreras wanted to weigh in here.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it was actually, when I spoke to this family, it was mainly just the customer service, just not being able to talk to somebody locally. They were always somewhere else. And then finally, the problem got resolved. And as of today, there's no problems. It was just one problem, but mainly it's always customer service. And actually there was another one. And the other one was, they found out later that it was the neighbors who was putting trash in her trash can. And that's why it was always so much more. But again, that got resolved too. And fair enough to what Councilor Lehman was saying, I am willing to negotiate, not negotiate, but to go out and get bids. And who knows, they could bring something better from Republic too. So it's okay. I just didn't want to, I also know that we have a debt with those trash bins. And I was just worried about that too. It's like, what are we gonna do with that? It was just different things. But if that's something that everybody sees fair, we should then go out for bids too.
Councilor Lehman, thank you. Councilor Contreras.
I'd really like staff to sharpen their pencils on the consumer side of this. We have a lot of diversity in our community, And that means that we need the diversity in the services provided. I mean, we need to be tailored and have options for these old folks that have very little garbage and very little need for a lot of stuff, and yet it's a big cost for them on a fixed income. Then we have, my house, I need the big recycle. I fill it up, and I'm okay with that. So I think we need to have a lot of options. I know I've heard a couple complaints the last couple of weeks. Somebody sold a house and they're required to pay for it for the following month, even though they don't even live there and somebody else owns it. And they're like, I'm paying their garbage bill for a full month. Some of these transition things and some of the, like the snowbird issue where some of these people go south or whatever for the winter, not that rich, but they do, and they don't have a service, but they're paying for it, or do they get a lower rate because they're not really needing a pickup? I mean, some of these small consumerism things could go a long way in Shakopee's innovation, actually, and thriving to address the needs of our constituents. So, we need to take what we've learned over the years, both, I thought Dick's had great service, actually, and they had smaller trucks. Yeah, they had other issues. I don't mean to be picking on any company. They're all great companies. We just, Dick's, it was our first run at a closed system, and there's bugs, and you work them out. And, there's bugs with anything. And I think we need to really look at what we've learned over both of these and take all of our consumer input and try to make it better, more consumer focused on options, so that the customer can actually tailor their service to their needs instead of having big government say, this is what you're going to get, this is what you're going to pay, whether you need it or not. I mean, we need to be more constituent friendly here,
Right.
and actually serve the need. I think that's our role.
Okay.
So that's what I'd like to see.
Well, I think we all hit on some great points. I think the customer service, we have tremendous customer service here at the city. It's part of what we do. It's top of mind every day. I think that a company in the garbage business should do the same. And then take that customer service on themselves rather than staff, right? I know we're the conduit, and I'm having a problem with our garbage, and they call city staff, and then city staff calls the organization. Personally, in my years, I have never called the city. I've always called our provider. And from that, I think that we want an organization that it puts customer service first, and then learn and lessen the burden on staff. I will say that, full disclosure, my wife works for the city of Minneapolis in solid waste and recycling, so I get told when to take the garbage out and what to recycle and all those things in our household. And we talk a lot about the carts. I believe we shouldn't be in the cart ownership business. I know the city spent well over $1 million on carts, and now we made a modification because we're running out of carts, because carts are breaking, and we shouldn't be in the cart business.
Mayor, we've had multiple occasions where our provider, whichever one it may have been, I don't want to name any, but have taken a position that the contract says this, and we're bound by this contract. So their customer service is actually limited by the wording in the contract. And that's where I think there's room for us and our staff and whoever we may seek RFPs from to work out how we are more consumer oriented and still achieving the goal. So.
All right. So
one last thing. You did
Councilor
bring up
Whiting?
the cart portion of it, and the carts. are quite an issue. We have had issues in the past where people were continuing to pay for the carts forever and ever, and it was just a bottomless pit. So we got to make sure the cost of those carts are factored in and it's equitable. If this does go out to a proposal, I'm saying.
Well, what I'm generally hearing is that maybe there is an opportunity to go to a competitively bid system and use our knowledge to try to refine an RFP that gets us closer to significant higher customer service, you know, some of the carts, some of the truck issues, and learn from what we've learned, right? And then incorporate those pain points into a contract and see if we can get a provider that would like to bid on our contract. Is that a fair analysis? Are we all, so we would.
Does staff have any questions on this?
What was that, Nate?
Does our staff have any questions on this?
No, I think we're good, counselors. I really appreciate the discussion, and I was just sitting here kind of ticking off in my mind some of the issues and how we would incorporate that into a contract. It's interesting, Councilor Lehman, because you brought it up about being innovative, and, you know, let's take a look at that contract and see if we can't be innovative in some of the things that we're asking for. Now, the trade-off might be on the price point, but we don't know that yet. So, yeah, no, it's interesting discussion.
Well, Mayor, if I may, let me point out, Mr. Reynolds, that if we work into the contract consumer flexibility, the single grandma, yeah, they might actually save money, and the large user might pay a little bit more, but that's equitable, isn't it?
No, I totally agree. I think you're right. I think it's, you know, it's really some great discussion, and it'll give us some opportunities to see what we can do to address those issues, because they're valid issues and concerns, and, you know, yeah, I think that there's some real opportunities there.
Yeah, and I think garbage, as mundane as it is, there's an opportunity, I agree, for innovation of that service. You know, years ago, the big thing is get your community to recycle, and then you can save money by the tonnage that you take in and things like that. And then the recycling market went to heck, but we're still recycling. We just had our fall cleanup day. It's vitally important that any new provider plays a role, strong partnership role in our cleanup days because of the value added that it brings to our community. So
they need to play a strong role in all of our community events, whether it's Rhythm on the Rails or any other community function.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think staff has enough direction. We're kind of leaning towards a RFP mode here, and go for that. Is that that's what we want to try to do here, right? And we'll probably see this back in a RFP form before we put it out. All right? Excellent discussion, thank you. Let's move ahead then to 10B1, Jennifer Lane Timber Trails Park Concept Review. Peggy Sue, welcome.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I wear a couple of hats, and one of them is park planning. So tonight I'm going to bring you through the last few months of, and Michael, you'll probably want to move the council members to the side. The last few months of planning for a new park and a playground replacement in the neighborhood south of County Road 78 and west of Marshall Road. There's an existing park there called Timber Trails Park, and a new park going in that we're calling Jennifer Lane Park. So this is where Jennifer Lane Park will be located. That's at the corner of Meadow Court and Jennifer Lane. It is a parcel that was given in addition to park dedication funds with the Prairie Meadows development. You may have, I'm sorry if you'll go back, you may have heard of this park as called Prairie Meadows. We are not calling it that. We're calling it Jennifer Lane Park because we have several parks that have the word prairie in them and a few parks that have the word meadows in them. So calling a park Prairie Meadows was a little confusing, and so we have just kind of scrapped that. So we have gotten a couple of questions, but I think it just ends up being easier as we continue to add parks into our system to name them based on location. The next park is Timber Trails. This is just kind of an existing conditions set of photos of what it looks like there. It's a smaller neighborhood park off of Blue Heron Circle that has a playground, a basketball court, and then a large open flex field. So we did a number of different engagement methods to talk to the neighborhood. The first thing was we sent residents a postcard and then hung a door hanger on their door and sent a city email to understand how they wanted to feel when they visited the new park at Jennifer Lane. We wanted to figure out, were they interested in it being kind of a calm, passive space, or were they looking for more of a play-based space that was active and energetic? And what we saw was kind of a really even divide on what people were looking for. The next thing that we did was an in-person open house. This was held in July outside in Timber Trails Park. We did have actually a pretty good turnout for this. We had about 36 residents and their families come. And we participated in a variety of activities. And if you look at the next slide, this is kind of an example of an activity. So this is what I call a design a park activity. So we cut out all different kinds of objects, whether that's playgrounds or sports fields, picnic benches, and had kids and families kind of put together what would this park look like? And the items were scaled, and there were more items than would fit into the park. And so that this gave us a kind of an idea of what was important to the community, because they had to self-make that decision, because you couldn't put a big playground and a hockey rink and a sports field. They didn't all fit. So this gave us a really good direction on what people were looking for. From there, we put together two concepts, and one was a very active concept that had a lot of play, and one was a more passive concept that was more, it had a play element, but it was a little bit more iconic and unique, and most of the space was left to be open for natural surface walking trails and just a little bit more passive. So in your packet, both of those designs were included just to kind of walk you through this process. But we brought that back to the neighborhood and asked them which would they prefer. And 75 residents did take this survey. This area that we sent out to was about 250, so pretty good turnout as far as getting those, typically in a mail survey, when we send something in the mail, we only get about 10% feedback. So to get 75 residents was pretty good. And most people told us what they preferred was that active traditional park. The other thing we asked about was basketball, and we heard from a lot of residents that they wanted basketball, and so we came up with these two kind of ideas. One being a bank shot course, which we'll see in a couple of pictures, and one being a half-court basketball court. Either could fit in the park, and what we saw was I asked this question, which is, I think bank shot is a great idea. I would prefer traditional half-court basketball, or I do not want basketball in this park. And what we ended up was it was a three-way tie, but most people, 2/3 of people wanted some kind of basketball. And because Timber Trails is only a half mile away from Jennifer Lane, which does have that half-court basketball court, staff determined that bank shot was probably a better idea, because if you were an older kid who lived in the Prairie Meadows neighborhoods, a half mile is really not that far to bike over to play basketball, and we wanted to make sure there was something available for all children. With Timber Trails, we also offered two concepts, a very traditional play structure that you would see in any of our parks, and then a more iconic kind of climbing structure. And this was a much more even split. Obviously, people leaned more towards that traditional playground structure, but we did have a lot of people who loved a more iconic climbing structure. And following this survey, we also did a virtual open house where a few families said, we just love if you could combine the two concepts. We want a unique climbing structure, but we don't want that to be the only thing that exists in the park. So from that, I'm going to walk you through the concepts. This is the concept that, based on resident feedback, residents decided on. And I'll kind of walk you through the park. So obviously the park has Meadow Court to the north and Jennifer Lane to the east. It does have some nice sidewalk loops. So it will eventually connect to the south to a sidewalk, and then has some nice looped trail through the park. To the left, in the orange where it's labeled letter G, is the playground. So this playground is an all ages playground. It serves both ages 2 to 5 and 5 to 12. It's got a few different play elements that we'll look at in the next slide, but for now we'll kind of just hang tight. But it does have a play equipment for all ages. To the right in the purple where there's a lot of color, that's the bank shot course. Now, if you're not familiar with bank shot, again, we'll look at it in the next slide in more detail, but this is kind of like a big horse court almost. All the backboards are different sizes. There's these kind of dots that kids can shoot from. So you could play a game like horse where it's everyone's shooting from a particular color, or you can kind of practice your skills. What's nice about this is it's also pretty ADA friendly. You could be playing this at any skill level. You could play it in a wheelchair, so we really like that. Letter H is a small kind of 16 by 16 park pavilion. One thing that we heard from both residents who wanted active and passive uses here was they were really looking for a neighborhood gathering spot. So we gave them a park shelter to kind of give that feel where you could go with your family and walk down your neighborhood and have a nice picnic. And then letter I is a large flex field. This is sized approximately for kind of age 7 to 9. That's about the size of a soccer field, but it could be used for any sport. You could play spike ball in it or any lawn games, or you could have a nice game of pickup soccer. Along the exterior of the park, you'll see some really nice landscaping. F is kind of a large evergreen buffer. There is a house directly next to the park, so we wanted to give them a nice buffer. But then this is also consistent with our new plan for neighborhood parks. So letters A is kind of a restored native prairie grass border that edges along the park. And this is in line again with the Parks and Trails Master Plan to give these neighborhood parks a little bit more wilderness around the edges so they're not just a big grassy green lawn. One thing that is shown, letter L, is a fence, and that fence is to separate the property to the south from the park. There's a pretty steep slope there, and it is also not the city's land to the south, and so that property owner did ask us for a fence there. But we also think it's a liability issue just to keep kids safe from seeing that and being enticed to maybe sled down it. It goes right into kind of like a stormwater infiltration pond. So we did want to add that fence there just to keep people safe. So I'm going to pause for a minute if anyone has any questions on this concept. Otherwise, I can go to the next slide that kind of shows some more details of the playground.
Peggy Sue, it's exciting because this Jennifer Lane has been waiting a while to get their park, and I know we were kind of waiting for another parcel and all the issues, but I think this is great. I visit parks. I like the concept of active yet passive, so the open field area that people can just gather, play. It can be flexible. I think that's an advantage rather than just having a single play area type concept. So, and my last comment is compliment to staff. I know we just did another park a while back, the Stagecoach one, I think. The amount of engagement with the public is never seen it at these levels. So the door knockers, the cards, the events, it's paying off because you're getting that engagement of the neighbors. So thank you for that. Other comments, Councilor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. 100% agree with the multifaceted communications techniques from internet to door knockers to mailings. I think the all above approach is a good way to go. Good job on that. The question that I have two, Mayor. If we can go back to the overall slide of this park. There you go. It looks to me that the F and A on this screen up against that existing house, it almost looks like we're encroaching on that house's property, and it's probably just a
Thank you.
Accident.
Yeah, Councilmember Lehman, I can understand where that might look like it. So the line to the left, it's just the way that the angle, the Google image that's kind of shown underneath it shows the angle of the house. We're not encroaching on that property at all. And these trees are kind of drawn to their full maturity. And so those are not the size or scale of the trees as we plant them. We do hope that they'll grow into be really robust evergreen trees to give a nice buffer, but in no way will we be encroaching on that neighbor's property.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is where the letter L, where the fence is, we've got a fence with an open area for playing, you know, maybe a makeup game of ball or something. Great use of space, but with the fence there and a steep grade and a drainage way, what's the chances of balls or, you know, whatever, frisbees, whatever they're doing, going over that fence into that area?
Yes, I think Councilmember Lehman, that's a great point. I think that could happen on any part of this park, that a stray ball or frisbee could go anywhere. The idea with the fence is more to prevent kids from sliding or kind of trespassing into that property if they were to, you know, our biggest concern is that it looks like an appealing hill to maybe sled into, and then they're sledding into open water. What you'll notice too is the grass color change. So right where there's the L, it also gets a little bit darker in color. That indicates a different type of grass material. So where it's I, it'll be more of a turf, and where it's where that L is and where that darker green color is going to be more of a native prairie grass. So I think that will also discourage kids from getting too close to that area. I think that's probably about 5 to 8 feet right there. So I think there's plenty of place and an area for kids to play and kick around a ball without getting too close to that fence or endangering kicking it over the fence.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Others want to weigh in here on Jennifer?
And I can also kind of walk through this play concept as well, and we can take a pause. I'll just quickly highlight some of the play equipment that we've selected. This playground manufacturer is the same that did the Holmes Park playground. We've switched the way that we do playground replacement now and playground design. We're working directly with a manufacturer, and it's allowing us to have a little bit more flexibility and decisiveness and responsiveness to neighborhoods in this. And so this play, which is on the right, this is just kind of 2 views. The smaller play area is that 2 to 5 play area, and then the larger play area is that 5 to 12. There are a couple of ADA elements that have been included in this as well. That green slide is kind of a roller slide, which is a nice ADA slide that has the metal rollers, which tends to be something that can be very stimulating with kids with disabilities. You'll also see the circular element. It's kind of like a merry-go-round, but it's an ADA accessible one. And that's nice because it allows for group play for ADA or for children with disabilities. And then we have added some swings. That was something that was not originally in the concept, and residents were like very up in arms that we hadn't included swings, and that was an oversight on our side. So this play has a lot of different climbing elements, lots of upper and lower body things, while also including some fun slides and something kind of for every age. On the left is just some precedent images of what that bank shot course will look like. Again, this is a little bit larger course than what will be there. Ours will only have 6 hoops. But again, you can kind of see they're all different heights, different shapes, giving kind of a different experience than traditional basketball.
All right.
Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor?
I like the fact that you're including elements in there that all kids can use. I think playground should be utilized by every ability and every ability of a child. So I'm really glad to see those elements are in there. So is the play surface, is that also easily navigatable to get through the looks like a brown, I don't know what it is. But-
Yeah, Councilmember Brennan, the overall largest portion of the material is going to be mulch. But the other thing that we're doing in all playgrounds is now adding rubber pads up onto ADA equipment and then up onto the platform for the larger play structures. So there will be a mix of some rubber areas that'll be a little bit easier. So if you wanted to get onto the platform where the slides are, you don't have to walk on the mulch. But we are seeing that from a lot of other communities, that even the communities that have switched to the rubber surfacing have found that that's not wearing very well and are going back to mulch. So we've made the decision to continue with mulch.
Okay. And when you have the basketball, I can't remember what it's called.
Bank shot.
And you had made a comment that some of the people did not want basketball. Course, is it quieter, or why don't they want the basketball court in their playground?
Yeah, Councilmember Brennan, I think there's a variety of reasons that people don't want basketball. One is noise or perception of noise. One thing we've seen in other engagement is that, especially with full court basketball, you get a lot of teenagers or large groups playing games, which we didn't feel like a full court would be right for this location regardless. But I think some people just have some, negative connotations around what basketball brings into their neighborhood or who basketball brings into their neighborhood. But we had 75 residents take the survey, and it was almost even 25 of wanting bank shot, wanting half court, or not wanting basketball at all. So we felt like the 50 people who wanted some kind of basketball warranted having basketball in the park. But we ultimately decided to go with bank shot just because of the nearby half court basketball court at Timber Trails.
Right. Okay. Councilor Contreras?
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Peggy Sue, quick question. I visited some parks, but not all of them. Is this the first time we're actually using bank shot, or have we used it before?
Yeah, Councilmember Contreras and members of the council, this is going to be the first bank shot course in the community. It's something that I think was pretty popular in the 80s and 90s and then kind of fell out of fashion and is coming back because of some of the reasons I listed. It's something that you can play with all ages. It's pretty unique, but it's also ADA accessible. So it's something that we're starting to see other communities. Egan just put one in. I believe Golden Valley also recently put one in. So we're starting to see that be something people are having interest in.
Perfect, thank you. And just quickly, awesome work again. I know the mayor and the Councilor Lehman already said it, but great work on all the communication. We truly appreciate it. And that just puts us at another level of the high quality customer service we have. I mean, it's like, hey, we're doing it and we're communicating all this and letting everybody know. And that way we have more involvement, more engagement. It's awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, can I ask how we're doing for budget? What do we have to spend on these, and what are the estimates on what you're proposing?
Yeah, Councilmember Lehman, we'll get to that as I finish the designs, and then we'll cover that at the end.
Proceed.
So this is the concept that would be done at Timber Trails. The existing swings are in good condition and those would remain. In addition to the playground upgrade, we'll also be doing some ADA upgrades to provide trails to the basketball court and a better access into the play area. So this is the proposed design, again, working with St. Croix Recreation on the elements of this playground. And this is kind of a hybrid from what we had shown the residents originally. We had shown them a traditional play structure and then a really climbing rope-based play structure. And because it was such an even split, we tried to make a hybrid. So this is a smaller play structure than what will be at Jennifer Lane. But it still has a lot of really fun elements. It has a few slides. It has a lot of climbing, upper and lower body work. But then we've added in a piece from a play company called Berliner, which is that kind of pyramid structure, which is kind of this really fun rope structure that gives a really unique climbing experience and will be a pretty different piece between the two parks. And what we liked about this, again, was just meshing those two concepts to provide a more unique experience. We didn't want these two playgrounds to feel the same because they're only a half-mile apart. So I think this gives a little bit of differentiation between the two playgrounds. So the cost estimates, the budget for Jennifer Lane, and I apologize right away that this is a little misleading. The budget for Jennifer Lane is actually $275, but that did include $25,000 that we've spent this year for the design work from Confluence to create the concepts that we have worked on so far. The site features, so the bank shot, the benches, the picnic shelter, the playground equipment, all of that will cost about $170,000. The site work, so grading, installation, and landscaping combined is about $60,000. And then we have added a construction contingency of $20,000. So for Jennifer Lane, we expect to be right on budget at $250,000. At Timber Trails, the budget comes from the Park Development Fund, or Park Asset Fund, because there is a scheduled replacement of playground equipment, is $115,000. $88,000 will be going to the replaced playground equipment and some updates to the container. The rest of the dollars will then be used by Public Works to do the ADA trail upgrades.
Remind everybody that one of these parks is brand new, and then one's a replacement.
Yeah, so Jennifer Lane, the costs for Jennifer Lane, that $250,000 will come from the Park Development Fund. Those funds were given to us from this Prairie Meadows development, in addition to the parkland that we are developing the park on. Timber Trails budget is coming from the Park Asset Fund, where we've paid actually rents on that playground equipment, anticipating the replacement.
More questions of staff? Counselor Lehman?
All these trails are gonna have connectivity, so we don't have any small trail connection issues later on?
Counselor Lehman, when I say trail upgrades, that's a little probably confusing. What we mean is the trail from entering the park to the basketball court and to the playground. Neither of those are currently ADA accessible in Timber Trails, so that's all we're doing as far as trail connections. At Jennifer Lane, there will be a gap in the trail network, so we are building a sidewalk there in anticipation of obtaining the property to the south, but we currently do not own that, so there will be a network gap until we obtain ownership of that southern parcel.
What distance is that gap, if I can ask?
Councilmember Lehman, I'm not sure of the exact distance. I think it's probably a couple hundred feet. We do know that it's a neighborhood issue, but unfortunately it's just something that can't be fixed at this time because we don't own the property to the south.
Right. But will people be able to get from one park to the other without that trail connection?
Yes, currently there are good connections from both parks to one another, and at this time, because there is no playground in the Prairie Meadows neighborhood, there are a lot of families that are walking either down to Timber Trails or all the way across 78 to the Autumn Hills Park on the north side of 78.
Will that connection in the future be a Michael Kursky department issue or a parks issue?
I think it would be a development issue. As the next parcel comes in, we
Right.
would require that connection.
Yeah, when that parcel to the south develops and all of the parcel also to the east, if there are further development in that Prairie Meadows neighborhood, we would require the developer make that connection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions of staff? If not, Peggy Sue, thank you for your presentation and all your work on these two parks.
Great. So tonight, all I'm asking is that that the City Council would approve the proposed plans for both Jennifer Lane and Timber Trails parks. If they're approved tonight, then engineering will solicit bids for Jennifer Lane and enter into a contract with St. Croix for the playground equipment. And we'd like to begin in spring 2021 so that these neighborhoods have new playgrounds next summer.
That would be great. Let's proceed some way. Contreras?
Mayor, yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed plan for Jennifer Lane Park and Timber Trail Playground. As
I have a
presented.
motion and a second by Counselor Brennan. Further discussion? I know this Jennifer Lane they've been on it for a long time here to get the park, and there's been some other factors that we haven't put it in here, but this is good news for that whole area for this park. And Timber Trails, I was there a couple years ago, and really needs a refresh, and I think that's great. So, motion on the table and second. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote.
Councilmember Brennan.
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras.
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting.
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Let's move ahead then to 10B2. This was tabled at our last meeting. Text amendment and zoning code update section. And welcome back, Peggy Sue.
Great, thank you, Mayor Mars, members of the council. Just as a refresher, I'm going to walk through my presentation again, and hopefully this will maybe in the interim we've had a little bit more time to read this, and we can discuss any questions or concerns. So again, this is some housekeeping text amendments to the city zoning code, to the definition section, and a few other sections. So again, this is just identifying some areas that need to be amended for consistency, and trying to improve the use and functionality of our code, and making sure that it is consistent with our 2040 comprehensive plan. So I'm going to walk through the changes again at a high level. So the first is that change to the definitions. So we're adding some new uses and editing some uses to remove redundant language or make definitions more clear. We're making some minor edits to the table of uses. Following the table of uses, we are associating specific conditions to directly follow the use table. So a lot of our uses within the use table have specific conditions that are located in various sections of the code. This might appear in some of the chapters that we're proposing to repeal tonight, but it also might be in some of the zoning chapters. They could be anywhere. They might even not even exist in the zoning code, but could exist in other sections of the city's code. So what we're doing is trying to aggregate that and put them directly after the table of uses. The next thing is repealing chapters 151, 012 through 014. Because these conditions, as mentioned previously, are going to directly follow the use table, they're now redundant. And so we're just eliminating them because they have been moved into a new area of the code. And then one of those things that we are moving in those sections that are being repealed is the conditions for a mining overlay permit. So those are now going to be moved into the mining overlay section. So again, the repealing of those 3 chapters of code is because we're moving them into some other different sections. And then finally, we're creating that parks and open space chapter. So this is one of the things we're trying to do to get our land use map consistent with our planned land use map in the comprehensive plan, is to create a parks and open space chapter. So this slide kind of shows some of those minor zoning table edits. So in the residential section, anything that's underlined is being added. Anything that's being stricken through is being removed. So accessory structures is something that's allowed as an accessory use in all districts, but it didn't appear in the zoning table, so it might be difficult for residents to understand if they're allowed something like a shed. Circled next to bed and breakfast inns, you'll see the number 7 appear. That's where a resident could actually click that number 7, and it will link them to the specific sections of code that require them to get a conditional use permit. So on top of obtaining a traditional conditional use permit, there are additional requirements that residents would need to get a bed and breakfast in. And what we were seeing before is that those conditions could appear in a variety of different places in the code. And what we're doing with this change is making them directly follow this table. So it'll be much easier for a resident to use. And that's why we're also repealing those sections, because that requirement will now directly follow this table. One thing that you'll see on this slide is the elimination of churches and other places of worship, and that's because we're actually in the definitions changing that to religious use or assembly hall. So we're removing it from this portion of the table, but we're adding it back in later under R. So in the next slide, this is a very similar circumstance in the commercial and industrial districts, where we're seeing just some minor changes to some definitions. We actually separated out medical and dental clinics so we could be more specific about where we'd like that use allowed. And so we've deleted it from that very top row where we allowed administrative, executive, and professional offices. That larger red chunk is breweries, so all the different kinds of breweries, a small brewery, a regular brewery, a brewery with a tap room, a brew pub. And so this was some housekeeping where we required a conditional use permit, which we felt like was not necessary for a lot of these uses, and we're switching them to permitted. But again, you'll see the number 9 follows all of them, and that will show directly after this table what the specific regulations are for any type of brewery use. And again, consistent with the residential section of the table, churches and other places of worship have been eliminated to be replaced in the section of R's under religious uses. So again, this is an example of that modified definition. So we've eliminated the word church, and instead we have made it this more accessible definition that's called place of worship or religious assembly hall. So this is kind of the example of when we say we've modified some definitions. It's really just clearing them up to be more consistent, more accurate, or more easy to understand for a regular resident. Some examples of some added definitions is we didn't actually have a definition for a park. And then if you'll hit the next one, one thing is we typically have been we didn't have a fuel station definition, and this was one that the Planning Commission really recommended, and they wanted it to encompass a lot of different and more innovative fuel types that we may see in the future. Both of these definitions do come from a standard. There is a planning handbook that recommends types of definitions and what the best one to use is, and so that's how we've selected these. In circumstances where a definition isn't found, we would use the Merriam-Webster's definition. So the biggest zoning consideration is that with the creation of the parks and open space definition and chapter, we're going to start to engage with residents. There are about 35 park facilities that will be impacted by this, where they will change from either their residential or commercial zoning to parks and open space, which is going to result in a lot of residents, about 5,000, being notified that their park is changing from whatever zoning district it is to this new district. So I think this is going to be a great time to talk with residents about parks, to talk to them about why we're doing this, and to educate them about this process. So at their regularly scheduled meeting on October 8th, the Planning Commission voted 6-0 to recommend that this body approve the proposed changes. And so our action requested tonight is to offer and pass a motion approving ordinance 2020-08 and its summary ordinance to make changes to the above listed, I'm not going to list all of these section codes, repealing some of the chapters and adding that parks and open space chapter.
All right. Thank you. And questions of staff? I guess this Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, one of the things I've been thinking about through all these changes, changing our zoning code to this new format is, do we have a running tally of how many properties we've made non-conforming in this process?
So Councilmember Lehman, the text amendments that are in front of you tonight will not make any properties non-conforming. What this is just doing is adding some definitions, in certain cases making some more uses more permitted, but this particular instance won't make anyone non-conforming.
Well, past actions have, so I was looking at the whole concept of these changes and trying to figure out how many properties we've made non-conforming.
Yeah.
It's a tough question. I'm not gonna get an answer tonight, I know, so I guess I'll just direct that back at staff to, if they ever find that answer, let me know.
And Councilmember Lehman, our goal is never to have non-conforming properties. We always prefer to have properties that conform with the code. So that's a big portion of why we're going through and trying to match to the planned land use map in the 2040 plan. I think that addresses probably some of those past problems of making things non-conforming, and so there are a number of parcels, and as we continue to make changes to the zoning code, that will address that. But that is never the intent of any of these changes, is to make people non-conforming, because it makes it a headache for everyone involved. So that's never our intention.
Well, and the reason I bring it up is it wasn't but a few years back, well, 10 years ago probably, or longer, where we actually changed some zoning and created a situation to where a whole bunch of properties were legally non-conforming and they weren't allowed to refinance, and they were stuck at very high interest rate mortgages when the rest of the community could refinance to a much lower rate, reinvest that money in fixing up their properties. So they kind of missed out, and actually some came forward with bank notes saying they wouldn't allow them to refinance or get a home equity line of credit because of the non-conforming use on the property. So I want to make sure that while we're going through this process, that we don't create that situation again, especially right now when interest rates are low and people have the opportunity to capitalize and make investments in their property.
Right.
So,
Well, that issue was 20 years ago and it was resolved. There are no zoning changes, rezoning anything here for this update here, so.
right, but there has been throughout this process over the last couple of years.
Okay.
So I'm just a little cautious about not necessarily what we're doing tonight, but in general of creating non-conforming uses.
Yep. Councilor Whiting?
Mr. Mayor, we've talked about this twice. You had some questions. Did you get your questions resolved? Didn't you table this?
We tabled this, and then specifically if I asked several questions of staff and got pretty good answers back here. I read it 4 times. I wanted to be sure too, so Councilor Contreras, did you have your hand up?
Sorry, I do. Thank you, Mayor. I just quickly wanted, it's not a question, it's actually more of a comment. Under the specific conditions, I just like the annotations. It's just such a user-friendly, you just click and it takes you directly. Good housekeeping, I think. And that's it. Thank you so much. Great work.
Thank you. Councilor Brennan?
Yep, I think it's much clearer for the consumer to come in and take a look at it. And the inclusion of the fuel station, I think was the right term. I think that's looking towards the future and new ideas. And I like the different zone for the park. So thank you very much for your hard work.
I did have a question, and I know it could be different actually in the document instead of what we have, but when I was paging through it, you're getting to various different zonings, and you don't know that without going back to the last page that has it on top. So if this is in a book for somebody to read at City Hall, I would strongly suggest that each page on the top has what zoning they're actually looking at. So this page says maybe it's industrial and what's allowed, and you turn a page and there's more industrial, make the next page still say you're still in industrial. Otherwise they bleed together and you don't know which zoning you're in until you go back to the last page to see where you're at.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councilmember Lehman. The document is just what's reflected to be put into MuniCode. Our code is online actually, and not a paper copy. So it's a little bit more user-friendly when you're using the web version. It's a little bit harder on the paper version.
All right, thank you. Counselor Whiting?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 02020-008 and the official summary ordinance for the proposed changes to the Shakopee City Code Section 151.002, 151.007, 151.049, repealing sections 151.012 through 151.14 and adding chapters 151.052 and move its adoption.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second, and I appreciate staff's effort to clean up our code, make it more user-friendly and stuff. Certainly they could work on the motion could have been cut down a little bit. Further discussion? Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, I think Councilor Whiting might have just made a record for the longest motion.
I didn't write it.
Reading the memo. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote?
Councilmember Brennan?
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras?
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting?
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman?
Aye.
Mayor Mars?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Peggy Sue.
Thank you.
Moving ahead, 11A, we have the city bill list. Any questions? Otherwise, that's for our review. Moving ahead then to 11B1, liaison administration report. Counselor Whiting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week, I did get to attend the Scale, Live, Learn, and Earn initiative focus group talking about some of the concepts they're looking at and what affordable housing and the concepts and different meanings meant and what our community thought about that. Also, last week, I had MVTA. We discussed, again, the Cedar Avenue Red Line discussion where the Met Council is kind of grappling at our territory and opt-out communities. So we're moving forward with some direction there. We also had a third quarter ridership report, which ridership is up from where it was, but not back to anything pre-COVID for sure. I do want to make a motion. I want to congratulate Mr. Lehman on a stunning victory. Great job. And congratulate the other candidates out there. And thank the voters for trusting me again for this position. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Whiting. Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, I don't have a liaison report at this time. I have a scale meeting on Friday.
Very good. Counselor Brennan?
I had a spec meeting, and we, let's see, we talked about the proposed CIP for 2021 through 2025. And we also discussed the West End substation that will be at the corner of Old Brickyard and 169. And we also have instructed staff to come back with the RFP for investment advisors to take a look at our investments to see if there's a better way for us to invest our money. I also attended the Live, Learn, and Earn a meeting that Councilor Whiting had attended on housing. It was the blueprint for Scott County. I also am part of the Live, Learn, and Earn for the United Transit Plan. And we met, it was like the housing plan and then the transit plan right after that. So it was a lot of Scott County talk. Let's see, I attended the cleanup day, which was great. It was a little bit slower than the last time. I was expecting a blizzard this time, but there was no blizzard. It was just kind of chilly. But we got out a little, or I did anyways, left a little bit earlier than the last time. So it'd be interesting to see what the results of that day were. Attended the swearing in of Officer Johnson, and he's badge number 93. He's a Shakopee High School graduate and also the Minnesota State University. So that's a good addition to our community. And I think it's beneficial that they already know the community. So let's see, I attended Bill's Toggery ribbon cutting for Best Cleaners and their tailoring area. So good luck to Best Cleaners. And I think that's it.
Counselor, thank you very much. Counselor Contreras?
Thank you, Mayor. Officially, well, they're not liaisons, but again, the cleanup day, again, I left early too. Swear in of our new officer, that was great to see. The ribbon cutting to Best Cleaners, I was there too. And school board, haven't had a meeting right now, but unfortunately, the referendum didn't pass. So we'll hear more about that as I go and I hear more. But that's it. Thank you so much.
Excellent, thank you very much. I took part in the cleanup day as well. I think that's a great event. I think that the line wasn't as long. We actually had a walk-up person that came at the end, so I thought that was great. Last week on the 22nd, the city of Shakopee hosted a regional south of the river with the League of Minnesota Cities. It was put on by the league. Surrounding city mayors and city administrators. Pretty open discussion of what's affecting our city. It was more of a listening session for the league. And I found it great that they can sit around. We sat here, we separated, and just had kind of a roundtable discussion. So I thought that was great. Last week, we brought Reverend Pond home right downtown and had that. I think in the spring when we get our plaque and our sign up, maybe hopefully with see what COVID is, we have a little bigger celebration with the signage on there. And then a new business getting new ownership, Sit and Sip, great business there that had they had a soft opening many weeks ago, and now they had a grand opening on Friday. So that's my mayor's report. Mr. Reynolds.
Just real quickly, we got through the election. What a lot of people don't understand is the amount of planning and work that, especially handled by our clerk staff, that goes into that election. And this year has been different because you used to go to the county and vote beforehand, and now it was in the city halls. And we quite literally had people snaking through the chambers, snaking through the alcove, and then down the hallway to the conference room where they ended up voting. A lot of hard work by our clerk staff and other staff. And the great thing about being part of a great team is that whenever they needed anything, there were 5 people on staff that were jumping in to try to help. And I was, as I get paid to be, nervous on occasion when it came to the election because of all the things that were happening in regards to it and the fact that we were doing it here really for the first time. So thank you all staff who were involved with that, but more importantly, thank the general public for understanding. It was not the easiest process this year around. COVID certainly didn't help that, but we got through it, and that's a big whew. Glad for that. That's all I have, sir.
All right. Councilor Lehman.
You're on mute.
You're mute. Yep, bad habit. Precinct 2, which was changed this year, which happens to be my voting precinct. When I went up to Pearson School, I thought it was very organized. It was ran very smooth and it was very safe. I was very impressed at the operation. So kudos to staff. You know, I only went to my own precinct, but I was very impressed. So thanks to all the workers, to not only staff for the organization, but the actual election workers. You know, they're a blessing, the work they do. So
We really need to thank those election judges. They do great work.
yeah.
And that's a very good point. I make it a point for every election to go and thank everyone at every polling place because it is important. And I tell them, we couldn't do this without you. They're an integral part. You know, they're citizens who give up their day to be a part of that process. And actually, it's more than that, just that day, because there's a ton of training that they have to do before they get there. So you're absolutely right, councilors. Kudos and thank you very, very, very much to those election poll workers and judges.
Great. Thank you. Item number 12, is there any other business before this council? Seeing none, we would move on to the next item, and just a reminder, the motion maker, if you could say the time on our adjournment, whoever makes that. Time of the meeting. Councilor Brennan.
I make a motion to adjourn to Thursday, November 12th, 2020 at 6:20 PM.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Contreras for our next meeting, November 12th, 2020 at 6:20. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote.
Councilmember Brennan.
Aye.
Councilmember Contreras.
Aye.
Councilmember Whiting.
Aye.
Councilmember Lehman.
Aye.
Mayor Mars.
Aye. A motion passes. We are adjourned at 10:35.